EOS Go presents EOS Radio, your first source for everything about the new blockchain Internet of Value. You'll hear from key contributors to EOS, including interviews with block.one, dapp development teams, and block producers. You'll get community updates and answers to common questions, meetup information, opportunities to get involved in EOS, and much more. We're live every Monday at 6 p.m. EST or 2300 UTC, wherever you are. And now it's time for your hosts, Kev and Blue Jays. In 3, 2, 1.
Yo, yo! Welcome to In the Know Mondays, everybody. This is EOS Radio on March 19th. Today we got a jam-packed show. Kevin, how's it going, man?
Blue Jays, always good to see you. This is episode 4 of EOS Radio, presented by EOS Go. We've had a big week with news. We have an excellent show today, as you well know. We have Mahbod from Everipedia. I won't attempt his last name quite yet. We also have EOSphere from Australia. They will actually be coming on first. They're a block producer candidate. They're going to talk about their heritage and their background. And then we have Thomas Cox coming on live, and he is going to do a weekly series with us. We're very happy and very excited to have him on with us. He's going to take questions from the community. He already has a set of them, and he will answer those as best he can. So it should be a pretty good show.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I'm really excited to talk to EOSphere and Mahbod, and Mr. Cox as well. It looks like it's going to be an awesome show. Kev, are we going to start off with the news, or are we going to go straight to EOSphere?
Let's do a little recap of the news. EOSphere will come in just a couple minutes. Let's also talk about EOS Go, make sure everybody is aware of EOS Go and what we are trying to accomplish here. Give us a little recap of EOS Go, if you can, please.
Yeah, sure. So EOS Go is a neutral community organization for informing and strengthening the EOS ecosystem. Up to and beyond the launch, we will continue to bring value to the EOS ecosystem by bringing more of the same work which the EOS community has come to expect from us. We produce videos, we talk to dapp people, we talk to block producers, and we also have all of that information cleared out in the open so that people can make good decisions on block producers, as well as this dapp space is just increasing and getting a lot more busy. So we're out here to make sure that everyone knows what we're doing. And I mean, we believe in a world aligned with EOS, and the EOS ecosystem is going to be amazing.
I mean, yeah, obviously it's going to be a sharing economy. It's going to be everybody can work for themselves, but also benefit the greater whole. Most people who are watching this show agree with that, and we are here to help make that happen. We are neutral and independent. We are not running for block producer, to make that clear. We are just looking to provide the best information and education and sort of help become an information clearinghouse for EOS, the blockchain.
And Kevin, and we are not block.one.
That's a good point. Thank you. And we are not block.one. We are a separate organization. We are unrelated. We're happy and very proud to sort of work with them and be the bridge to help them disseminate information, but we are not block.one. I know we have received some questions about that, so thank you for clarifying, Blue Jays.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't know if anyone has caught the amazing article by Katie Roman about the Industrial Revolution. I think that was an amazing article, and I love the imagery there as well too, Kevin. And I think as we form this new ecosystem and this new product that's out there, that's going to change pretty much the way technology is implemented on a network. We're going to see some really cool communities spawn up from this.
And that's the great thing about this, is that because every community is decentralized and everybody has to work together to make the community stronger, you end up with a wonderful set of new decentralized autonomous companies that will be governed by their own people and will hopefully provide value to each other, working for each other, but also for themselves in order for a greater good. And that way all the interests and incentives are aligned, and therefore everybody wins, I guess you could say, which is a good business relationship.
Absolutely. So let's bring on EOSphere. Let's have them come on, and we can get started with them. They are a candidate based out of Australia, and I believe if I've seen some really cool updates on Twitter about them doing meetups across of Australia, and Australia is a pretty big landmass, and for them to be able to cover one corner to the other, they're on a really big road tour. They're going, I believe I saw Perth, which is on the western end of Australia, and then all the way to the east end, Brisbane. I think it's said in an interesting way. Hey guys.
Hey Ross, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Ross is on there while he's working on his thing. I think they also covered Sydney, Adelaide. I believe there was part in. They might have gone to Queensland too, which is in the northeast of Australia. Hey Ross, can you hear us?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sound good. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. I think we're also waiting on Ken. Is that right?
Yeah, he was just coming in on another link.
Perfect. Yeah, and we were just talking about your meetup tour, trying to remember all the cities you hit. I think there were 5 of them. Is that right?
Yeah, 5 cities. Yeah, I can give you the rundown of that. There's Ken.
Hey Ken.
Hey Ken. Welcome.
Morning, guys, or should I say good evening?
Yeah.
Hey, well, for us evening, but good morning to you. I believe, is it 6 a.m. over there?
It is 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
That's amazing. You guys are smiling. It's hard to believe at 6 a.m, but thank you for drinking your coffee and joining us here.
I'm smiling because we're on your show.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, that's very flattering.
Did you guys hit up Queensland in the northeast there?
Yes, we went to Brisbane.
Brisbane, that's right.
Brisbane.
Okay.
Also known as Bris Vegas in Australia.
Oh.
Is that right?
You did some gambling, did you?
No, I didn't do any gambling.
You have better things to spend money on, I'm sure.
Yeah, like flights and accommodation.
Yeah,
Right.
And EOS.
And EOS, yeah. I believe it's looking good today.
Yeah. Well, welcome, guys. So we have Ross and Ken from EOSphere. Did I say it right? Is that how would you guys like to say it?
Yep, that's right.
All right, awesome. And guys, we normally do a who, what, where, why, when, and that's the nature of these interviews. Basically, let everybody know about you as a block candidate, and we start off with the who. So I mean,
All right.
go ahead.
Let me take this one, Ken.
Sure.
So who we are Australian-based company where primarily we aim to bootstrap the EOS community in Australia. The name EOSphere comes from obviously EOS, but sphere meaning encompassing an ecosystem and a community. And we don't aim to only support Australia. We aim to support the entire EOSphere. You would have seen that in a few of our statements. At this point, there are 5 of us on the team. There's myself, co-founder, and then obviously Ken, my other co-founder. It was actually Ken that rallied us together originally as a team. We then have Walter Bewakwa, who does our technical architecture. We have Rick Schmidt, who is our community manager, and we have Shelley Dold, who's our marketing and events coordinator. It was actually Shelley that put together the entire meetup tour, managed to schedule all of the venues, get the catering sorted, make sure audio visual was correct, etc., travel and accommodation and the like. So you guys are talking a little bit about our meetup tour. Yeah, maybe I can give you a little rundown about that. It's still kind of about who we are. It was our primary and initiative that we actually ran with, where we wanted to say, okay, let's go and see on Australia and see what the EOS community is all about. Because Ken had mentioned a few times that we hadn't really seen any meetups or any kind of conversation about what's going on in this neck of the woods. So we decided to do this 5-city meetup tour. We went to Perth, then we went to Brisbane, Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne. All up, we saw about 300 attendees if you take all of the venues, which isn't bad considering Australia isn't as large as what you guys would have expected in the States, etc. But the turnout was great. The people we met were fantastic. Mm-hmm. It was such an amazing experience. I know I certainly have got a lot more respect for people that tour and do multiple conferences back to back, because wow, did it take it out of me. And the rest of the team, wow, it was really tough. we also got to meet a lot of people from different walks and backs of life, where some guys are developers, some guys are just speculators on tokens. Some people just wanted to know what the hell blockchain is, and they just happened to come to an EOS event.
That works.
And Ken?
Oh, in terms of the meetup tour and the like, I just really enjoyed meeting everyone that came along. People were curious. They were incredibly friendly. I think that's maybe anyone who's involved in EOS, I think, has certain values at heart. And they were very supportive as well in terms of what we were doing, and really grateful that we had organised and put this on. And I think I just had a quick look, Ross, before we came on there. I think we've now got over 620 EOS members in EOS Australia across the country, which is to building a community here. That's what the purpose was about, was to really gather that community.
That's great. Well done. And when you say just incredibly friendly people, that describes all of Australia, right? Not just EOS fans.
Yes, Australians are incredibly friendly, yeah.
Got something to do with the weather.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. Well, and
now, sorry.
Go ahead,
How many poisonous animals did you encounter on this meetup tour?
I've managed.
Good.
Okay. Sorry, that's all we seem to think about outside of Australia, is all the extremely high number of deadly animals you guys have, and all. Excuse me there. So anyway, let's go ahead forward to your backgrounds before EOS. Where do you guys come from?
Yeah, that Ken?
Yeah, sure. So Ross and I, we've worked with each other for the last 10 years for a large global systems integration and services IT company. So that's how we got to know each other. We've built data centers for hospitals, banks, and the like together. But Ross, interestingly, back in late 2013, introduced me to the world of cryptocurrencies. Ross was mining Litecoin back at the day. And I actually, just the person that I am, I'd done a bit of research and stumbled across something fascinating called ProtoShares, which I don't know if you're aware is the precursor to BitShares. That was how BitShares was essentially crowdfunded. Well, that was it. I tell the story on the meetup tour. I took the red pill, completely immersed myself in all things cryptocurrencies. And Ross and I, for the past 4 years or so, have worked on nearly all of Dan Larimer's projects and work. And we've got to the point now where actually we've made this our full-time gig. So, we're dedicated, Ross and I are both dedicated full-time to EOSphere and trying to build the EOS community, offer the community a quality block producer as an option candidate. And we're really excited that we get to do this every day now. It's absolutely, a major goal for both of us that we've achieved this.
He always touts me as the person that got him into cryptocurrency. I remember him convincing me to sell off my Litecoin to get into ProtoShares. And it's just kept on going from there. The whole ProtoShares and Angel shares. I can even remember 2 years ago, Ken standing at my office door saying, "Ross, you've got to read this thing. It's called Steam." And Dan was talking about it on BitShares Talk. You've got to get in on it. I'm like, okay, well, you're right with the BitShares and the Angel shares, so let's do it.
Ken, what attracted you to ProtoShares?
There was an interesting concept that's actually got some parallels today with EOS in the sense that the proto part of ProtoShares, if you held ProtoShares, then you got a share in any project that was launched by the Invictus team or Dan Larimer's team. So I think back in the day we had like BitShares Music, BitShares Vote, I think BitShares Play came later, the Dex, BitShares X. And so it was very well, structured and the like. And of course, back in late 2013, 2014, a decentralized exchange, Dan was way ahead of his time back then. And it was probably one of the most exciting projects, going around compared to just a traditional, currency transfer blockchain.
see the common thread here. It's like we tend to be following Dan wherever he goes.
Well, you're just following the best blockchain. I mean, obviously, Dan is still, it seems he's still far ahead of everybody else in terms of account recovery, numerous other things he's baking into the EOSIO software. And you guys were actually witnesses, which also known as block producers for BitShares. Is that right? And for Steam?
Yeah, for BitShares, we got involved early. We were stakeholders, and I actually had an idea to create an application called Mine BitShares. At the time, most people involved in blockchain cryptocurrencies, mining was probably the way that everyone got involved. And so, but you couldn't mine BitShares, of course, because it was a DPoS, eventually graphene-based project. So I had some experience and developed a site called Mine BitShares that allowed people to effectively mine BitShares. What was actually happening behind the scenes was that they were mining traditional altcoins. We would sell them off, buy BitUSD. That's what Dan got involved with. Dan was quite excited about this idea about bringing new people and introducing them to the stability of BitUSD. And I think back maybe I ran that project for about a year or so. It was very time intensive. One, I had to develop the site, and we actually had BitShares witnesses as support to help fund it. And eventually, it never really took off. We tried really hard, and I ended up donating the site, the code to the community. And actually, a really good chap, I think Jonathan Bahai, took it over, took it to the next level. But I don't think it exists today. But it was an interesting idea at the time. It was virtual mining for BitUSD.
So you guys are really veterans in the space, essentially, in Dan's world, I guess you would say. Why are you running for block producer?
Why are we running for block producer? I think that we ultimately want to realize that vision of a blockchain, smart contract, decentralized platform, actually bringing all the promises that we've heard that it can be delivered to reality. And we feel that the expertise and heritage that we bring will enable at least the DPoS side of things. We would be a positive block producer for the actual ecosystem itself to make sure it's healthy, etc. And we got a few other ideas about community engagement. I think we'll run through that in a moment. But ultimately, we feel very positively and strongly about what general purpose blockchain and what it can actually do for the world.
And from my perspective, I think there was a calling for block producers. This is a community launch blockchain. And when we looked at our heritage, both from a professional perspective and obviously with Dan's previous work, we thought, well, look, I'm sure that we've got a set of attributes that would be appreciated by token holders who want quality, well-known entities to actually help start this network as well. And we're really excited about the prospect of what being a block producer can actually do for helping to grow the ecosystem, especially in our part of the world.
So, maybe we should touch on a bit of our community initiatives. I am extremely passionate about feeding it back to the developer and education community. We've spent a lot of effort on this meetup tour. We've met a lot of people that have got ideas for decentralized apps, and we've got people with a lot of ideas for actually getting involved because they are developers and they want to be part of this new age. One of our initial initiatives now is we actually sponsoring the Blockchain Center in Melbourne. We actually sponsor them for a meetup each month. I don't know if we mentioned earlier, but we completely self-funded at the moment, so it's not like we can funnel all of our funds directly into education and developer assistance, which is part of what our actual manifesto is for what we want to do when we actually become block producers. So we started off a bit small. So we funded the Blockchain Center. We're currently investigating assisting universities with courses. Ken, anything you can add?
Yeah, look, those are early discussions just now in terms of a couple of the key forward-thinking universities here in Australia. But we're really, I think EOS is going to be successful anyway. But if we can get support for developers, education happening in each of the different regions throughout the world, then we can really accelerate adoption.
So obviously we doing what we can in our region, which is Australia, right? Not to say that we're not interested in supporting, if we had to be elected, supporting the rest of the world. For instance, some kind of community initiative. I know EOS Go is going to need some funding at some point. We are supporters of the Chintai initiative at the moment. I'm not quite sure what that means as far as financial support, but we certainly pledge our support to be doing whatever we can if we were elected.
Well, that's why I'm glad to see you or talk to you guys here. You are doing a great job putting out content, doing meetups. Obviously, that meetup tour was huge. And I would argue that your videos thus far have been some of the most comprehensive guides and also the most professionally done. So I would say kudos there.
Man, I saw last night that we just did 1,100 views on our block producer animation.
That was a great video. I mean, it really explained a lot. It's excellent for anyone who is either involved in EOS or even trying to get involved in EOS. So thank you guys for putting out that great content. And it's also nice to bring you on here and sort of let the world see you guys, because you are down under, as they say. So thank you for coming on. Let's talk about where you will be located, where the servers will be, and so on and so forth.
I can take this if you like, Ross. So we've detailed in our candidacy statement that we're going to be leveraging cloud infrastructure off the bat. So we've got lots of experience with AWS and Google's cloud platforms. And the reason for choosing cloud is a couple of reasons. First, really, is to give us that agility. We're really preparing for the worst in terms of the network trying to be potentially disrupted by external forces. And we think that, we know that by using cloud, we're able to move systems quickly, dynamically scale up and down, readjust our, DDoS prevention capabilities and the like. So it just gives us that agility and mitigates quite a bit of risk, I think, from our perspective. In terms of, where are we going to locate the servers? It's likely that we'll have our primary production servers in Sydney, and we'll have our failovers possibly in Singapore. So what we're doing just now is we're actually ramping up and doing a lot of latency tests, as you well know, with half-second block times and Dan's discussions about potential handover from BPs. We need to make sure that latency isn't an issue. I mean, we've got some really good connections through to Australia, so it's effectively just the same as the rest of the world. But that's the key thinking and reasoning, and it allows us to quickly scale if needed as well. There's some incredible systems on these platforms these days. I think, Ross, what sort of memory capacity?
You can get to like 4 terabytes on AWS of memory, which is like, wow.
That is a lot. Wow.
It is a lot. 128 vCPUs. Yeah, it's quite a beast.
You guys are making are making a large investment. That's excellent. That's great.
Well, I think the idea is that we're using the cloud so that we're going to mitigate any kind of logistics issues we got if we own our own infrastructure and then suddenly realize we need double the memory. Then we got to wait 5 weeks for the hardware to arrive. I think personally I'd probably prefer to have our own infrastructure at some point, but we need to get to a point where we right-sized so we understand what we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think a lot of block producers are going that way.
Are you currently using AWS for Steam witnessing?
Yeah.
I think I'm a backup witness in effect now on Steam, and that's actually running on Google's platform. So that's been for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm actually hosted in a data center on bare metal in my Steam node.
I see.
Well, I'm also a backup witness at this point.
Okay, good to know. Anything else from the hardware perspective you guys wanted to let the viewers know?
I think just
I was going to say maybe not the hardware perspective, but I think the other aspect of our solution for BP infrastructure that's probably important to call out is the operational aspects. So as seasoned data center professionals, we recognize that it's great having a fantastic hardware solution, but if you don't have the operational rigor surrounding it, then in terms of monitoring, capacity management, incident management, then you're not doing the solution, full justice in effect. So that's something that we're going to have on day zero. So I think it's important that if we are elected as initial block producer, that we're easy to be contacted by our peers. So we'll have a 24/7 capability to get in touch with us. And we hope we're actually working on some monitoring tools just now that we're really open to sharing with the rest of the BP community to use some of our experience and say, look, guys, this is what we're using to help us monitor and keep an eye on the systems and know quickly if there's any capacity issues or performance spikes and the like. Maybe you guys might want to use the same.
How fantastic would it be if we had a single pane of glass that we could actually see the health of the entire chain?
Yeah, that sounds incredible to me. I would love that. And let's also talk about, let's move forward to the harder questions. We've been asking each block producer candidate about dividends and their stance on dividends and how that might work out. What are your thoughts?
Well, I feel very strongly on, against that. And I'm really glad that there's been some clarity from Thomas in terms of, vote buying and the like. And the reason being is I see a scenario where if there was vote buying or dividends, then essentially we'd have a race to zero for block producers in terms of the margin, say, for want of a better word, that they would make. Imagine a scenario where you have a block producer that says, you vote for me and I'll return a proportion of block rewards. They're no doubt going to become popular very quickly. And so others will think, well, why can't I do that? They'll do that. But of course, to get an advantage, they'll offer more of the block rewards than the other person. And you can see quickly we'll have a race to zero where you could even get a scenario where the funds required to actually maintain and scale the blockchain infrastructure is threatened, because the only way to stay competitive would be to offer more and more of the block rewards through to the vote, those that vote for you. So really, what's the point? We're better off not having inflation and the like if that's a scenario that we want to see. So we're pretty strongly against it. We're glad that it's been clarified, and we think that we can do a lot more for the EOS ecosystem by the community benefit activities that we're all doing around the globe. I think that's going to be incredibly powerful. If we're doing all that in parallel, then it's not just reliant on block.one's initiatives or EOS VC's initiative. We have a third stream of activity happening that I think will create very, very mass adoption of EOS.
One question I forgot to ask in the technical segment was, what do you guys think about the EOS storage and how that's going to be different when it comes to EOS rather than Steemit or BitShares?
So I'll take that. So I actually had a conversation with Walter. He's obviously our technical architect. He actually works in the storage world. So the one day he created this whole mad scientist drawing about how he sees the IPFS side of things actually coming together. He's still got a lot of questions, and I think that he's actually going to be putting together a collection of questions that hopefully he can get some direction from the devs. The other blockchains obviously don't have any direct storage that is referenced by the chain itself. I think it's fantastic. It takes it to the next level in order to support applications for enterprise, where it might be pretty difficult for them to host their own storage. But then the other question is also, how much storage do you actually use of your actual app itself? You know, getting a run through technically about how it aims to work, it seems pretty revolutionary. And I think that we're going to keep our ear close to the ground and probably work a little bit closer with the devs that are involved in order to understand exactly how we can put this into implementation. But we're very pro it.
Yeah, the good thing is it's not scheduled to be released until I think the end of the year. So
that is a very good thing.
I think a lot of block producers are happy about that.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about, we were looking at Blue Jays. We had a question that we wanted to bring up with them about, remind me, let's see. Sorry about that. Had a moment.
Was it the community engagement question?
Community engagement, of course, important. Let's move forward to, well, this is a question we ask everybody that comes on the show. Where do you guys see EOS going? I mean, give us a year forward. How is the blockchain looking? What is the future for EOS, we should say?
Okay, I think both of us are going to want to answer this because we both got different perspectives. I see that once we demonstrate that the platform can in fact take the number of transactions per second and can scale as expected, I think we'll see a migration of DApps coming from other platforms. Let me take a week.
So that brings to the famous quote that Dan made on Telegram. He talked about BTC coming on EOS when there's a two-way currency peg. So basically what he's saying is if we set up a value transfer, then we have the infrastructure on EOS. Is that pretty much what he's saying? We just need to set up a currency peg?
Well, the BTC side of things, didn't read too much into that. I was more talking about the decentralized apps.
Oh yeah. Well, if you didn't know, on Telegram, he mentioned that.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Okay.
What I'm most interested and excited about with the EOS platform is apps that probably we're not even aware that is possible today. We spoke about it in our meetup tour. We actually compared, the number of transactions that are required, say, for Visa, Facebook, and a centralized exchange.
Yeah.
With the context that why do we need millions of transactions per second? Well, if we're going to be running thousands of concurrent enterprise dApps with millions of users each, then that's why we need it. Because I think anyone who's looked at this can see that Steam and BitShares today are really underutilized in terms of what they're capable of. But I think one of the most exciting aspects is the potential Steam integration. Brendan mentioned and Dan mentioned that there's going to be some sort of Steam integrations that are going to address the distribution issue that occurs with Steam today. And if you look at some of the new platforms that are running on the Steam blockchain that were created by the community, such as DTube and DLive, those types of ideas are really exciting. And Everipedia is a great example of that in terms of providing a platform to essentially incentivize people to create content. So that I'm really excited about what might happen with the Steam-like integrations with EOS.
Very cool, very cool.
Very nice.
I think we have our next guest coming up on here soon. His name is Moghadam from Everipedia.
We're just talking about him.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, good to see you.
All right, is this working? Sorry, this is my first time Zooming. That's why I'm being a little bit of a novice.
That's okay.
Right.
Once you go Zoom, you can't go back.
Once you go Zoom, the app goes kaboom.
There you go. You're a rapper.
Well,
yes, sir. Well, how's it? So what's going on, guys? Wait, so you, I think, did I just come in on? You guys were talking about what Everipedia is?
Yes.
That's all we talk about here. Absolutely, Everipedia all day long.
Really? Well, do you guys have pages on the site? We can make your pages.
Yeah, I mean, we would love that, definitely. Yeah,
For sure, yeah. Also for the show.
Well, let's wrap up with EOSphere, guys. Did you guys want to, Ross and Ken, is there anything else that you guys wanted to say? And we just wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming on.
Well, and also, where can people find more about you guys? Because you are so far down under. Where can people follow you and keep up? And what would you like them to? Where would you like them to go?
Well, I would say Twitter. That's the first stop. All the links to all of our videos and any content we post on Steam, it's on Twitter. Shelly would like you to probably use Instagram a bit more. We're going to be in Hong Kong for the EOSIO meetup on the 6th of April, I think it is. So if anybody's around there, come and find us and have a conversation.
Cool.
Yeah, watch this space. I think we will be having some kind of function in the next month or so. Another meetup, maybe just a local one. And yeah, and then once we launch the chain, we'll have some kind of block launch party.
Awesome.
I can keep spreading it. Shelly's really looking for venues.
Well, cool. Thank you guys very much again. Blue Jays and I talked to you a little bit before the show as well, and we both agreed you both sound like good guys. I mean, so we're just excited to have you on the show, and thank you for coming on. Looking forward to this journey with you guys.
Thanks
Great,
guys.
for having me.
Enjoy the launch party.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Bye.
See you later.
Mahbod,
Yo,
how you doing, man?
I am chilling. I'm chilling. Thanks for talking to me. It's really cool to see people excited about Everipedia.
Yeah,
Yes.
We're looking to learn a lot more, hoping to find out not only about the airdrop, which is a big topic, of course, but also looking to learn more about how you guys plan to go about it, how you guys plan to beat out Wikipedia eventually. But let's start with the airdrop. What's the latest info we should know about the airdrop?
Oh my goodness, I don't even keep track anymore. The place to go for it is really the Telegram, and there's a pinned message on the Telegram. But there's so much excitement about the airdrop, and I mean rightfully so. But like for example, on the Telegram, I'm kind of just always trying to get people to make pages. I think the most exciting thing about the site is to start your own wiki page. That's what got me into it, is just like I wanted my own Wikipedia page, and suddenly I could have one. That meant a lot to me.
So if we start one for EOS Go, it's going to be automatically transferred when it's under EOS, right?
Yeah, well, so I think so right now you already get IQ on the site, but the IQ right now is just the same as like you get on Rap Genius. It's just like kind of a point system. So how that's going to translate to tokens, I really don't know how it's going to work. But the tokens, I mean, it's a crazy technology. I think Larry Sanger put it very, very well in his talk at Token Fest yesterday, where he said this solves the problem of knowledge websites, which is that a contributor thinks that a centralized entity is going to own my work. And that's not going to happen anymore. Like we're going to have these tokens that represent ownership of the content. So it's going to change the ball game. So already we've already got a huge community and a lot of people who are invested in Everipedia. And you see things like for example, I was at demo day yesterday, and Justin Can, who's a big YC guy, he had hundreds of people invest in his new company, Atrium, just to kind of build a community around it. So there's other ways that you can try to incentivize community. But what tokens really are is just a tool. It's going to be a tool that I think is going to help to make my job a lot easier.
And essentially so for users of Everipedia, there's going to be that education there, right? Like you said, people think that there's a centralized, pretty much gatekeeper of knowledge. And now that changes where not only is it available for everyone to edit, but now for everyone to govern as well with the IQ token. Is that the concept?
That is the plan, yeah. And working the team, the blockchain team that we have is working very closely with the EOS team, and it's really cool that the founder of EOS is the guy who built Steemit, because that was basically a first attempt at this, but we're trying to make it much better. We think that we can do an even better model of how a community can own a knowledge project.
So, sorry, Kevin, just one question. Is there going to be the ability to blog on Everipedia?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's an encyclopedia.
Okay.
And let's back up a little bit too. Go back to the who about you, Mahbod. What is your background? How did you get involved with Everipedia? I know that you were with Rap Genius for a while. You helped co-found that.
Genius, I would say, was in some ways the inspiration for Everipedia, you could say. Because, like, Sam, who's younger than I am, he's the president of Everipedia. He was in college, and he's thinking to himself, why is there, like, this bomb wiki site for rap, but the wiki site for Wikipedia, like, you know, it's good, but it's so old and it's not Web 2.0. So he wanted to basically build the Rap Genius of Wikipedia. But then now some people are calling it a pivot. I don't like I'm saying, I don't really think it's a pivot to go to blockchain. I think blockchain is a tool that's going to help us do our job better. But as a blockchain enthusiast myself, I'm sure you can imagine how much I wish Genius would tokenize. I think if Genius tokenized, like, who knows what would happen? It would be totally insane.
And Genius was extremely successful. For those who are not aware, did you found Genius out of your college dorm room? What's the story behind that? And how did you work that out?
So I was working at a law firm, and Tom and Alon were working at Google and D.E. Shaw, respectively. That's a big hedge fund. And we kind of just started it for fun. We were just kind of doing it. We all had blogs, so we thought of this as an extension of our blogs. And then what made it seem really legit was getting into Y Combinator. Like, at the time, Y Combinator was this holy grail. So it's kind of funny now. Like, I think they let in, like, who knows how many every year. It's gotten a bit watered down.
But you guys were one of the most successful projects that came out of Y Combinator. And you were on the stage of TechCrunch in New York City. And then now you're involved in Everipedia. And now, how'd you come across Sam? How'd you get involved with Everipedia exactly?
Yeah, well, one final thing I'll say about Genius is also that notice Genius is kind of doubling back down on the media side of the platform and shying away from the community aspects. So I think that might be where tokenization could have made a big difference. But so you're asking about Sam. I was giving a talk at UCLA. And I was kind of alluding to it before. I really always wanted a Wikipedia page. It was kind of my dream to have one. And someone had actually made me one in 2013, but Wikipedia deleted it because they said that I'm not important enough to have one. So I was giving this talk at UCLA, and then Sam came and showed me my Everipedia page. And he's like, hey, check it out. This is your Everipedia page. It's like your Wikipedia page. And I thought, like, I instantly was just like, this is really, really good. Because if I want one, I'm sure there's a lot of people who want one. So I thought this could be really, really big. So I was able to help him raise venture capital. So he let me come on as co-founder. And he had already started the site with Teddy, who's the CEO. And Travis, who's the CTO, joined the same time that I did. He kind of became the other dude who was helping them build the site.
That's pretty cool.
So
go ahead, Blue Jays.
Yeah. So Mahbod, why do you think Everipedia is going to be the next Wikipedia?
Well, when we first started it, we kind of thought this is going to be the expansion pack to Wikipedia. It's basically all of this additional content built around the shell of Wikipedia. And, like, for example, we have Wikipedia imported on the site.
Okay.
So we didn't start with a tabula rasa. We started with Wikipedia, and we're building on top of the Wikipedia import. But the tokenization aspect, I mean, the craziest thing about the tokenization, we haven't even launched the token yet, but 4 months ago, right when we announced the plans to do this, that made Larry Sanger join the company full time. And he's the co-founder of Wikipedia. So that's pretty insane. And he 100% thinks that he actually says that tokenization was basically contemplated. Like, they were thinking something like this should exist in 2001 when they built Wikipedia.
Oh, wow.
But it just didn't exist yet. So like now it finally exists. So he thinks this is like his true culmination of his vision. And this is the guy who gave birth to Wikipedia, you know. So
wow. And this tokenization allows the contributors to be rewarded, right? The readers can reward the contributors for quality content. Is that right?
I don't think it's really like that. I think it basically is the tokenization represents that people own their content on the platform. And basically who is creating the content on the platform also gets to govern the platform. That's basically the mantra behind our tokenization structure.
So essentially the IQ token, the more of it you have, the more interested you are to not only keep the site updated, but also govern it as well.
Yeah, like, you know, people, if someone asks, like, is InfoWars an acceptable citation? And then we can set up a token vote. Like, I'm not the technical guy, so I don't really know how the mechanics of it are going to be, but these boys are building it, and you know, Steemit is like a first iteration. So now, like, the founder of Steemit is actually working on like a better, I've heard he's working on a better Steemit. It's also going to be this governance-based system. So what we're building is not just going to be for Everipedia. It's going to be the way that crowd knowledge sites work, hopefully.
Huh. That's cool. How the token would...
Hopefully Genius, like, how cool would it be if Genius uses our platform? Like, that would really be my dream come true.
There you go. Maybe you can be able to, once Everipedia is successful, you can go over and say, hey, Genius, look at this.
That would be some true Moghadam incest, because it would be like my two children finally united.
And that's where the token gains its value, right, is through the governance. And people will want these tokens so they can help govern the platform and have a bigger say on the platform.
Yeah, well, if we truly can become the next Wikipedia or become one with Wikipedia, then it could be a very, very powerful system. Hopefully a justly built, righteous governance system.
And you guys were one of the first to announce your use of the EOS blockchain, as well as how you're going to distribute your tokens as well. What was the deciding factor behind that, and what were some of the things that you were considering when you decided to go that route?
Well, for me, Sam, I don't really understand EOS. What I know about it, I learned from our developers, but everything they just tell me about it is so cool. Like, for example, you don't have a QR code anymore. You just have an @ in your name, like on Twitter. So EOS is really trying to build a modern blockchain platform. So I respect that. One thing that Sam told me that really caught my attention and our team's attention right off the bat is that EOS is the most environmentally friendly choice because the site can be hosted on the tokens. So we are very, very excited to minimize the environmental impact, as we know the blockchain is going to use a lot of electricity. So if we can help to recycle, as it were, through EOS and minimize the environmental impact, that means a lot to us. And then Sam describes EOS as digital real estate. So, like, as a Persian, that definitely appeals to me. You know, we're just obsessed with real estate.
Yeah.
Well, and so you guys walk us through the funding process with the venture capitalists, with the system that EOS has set up. We have a lot of DApp developers and teams who are looking into that and trying to figure out how to navigate it. So what kind of advice can you give?
It's definitely good to pitch. I think one way that I heard it described is as it's like owning stock in a stock exchange and then subsequently getting a piece of all the IPOs on that exchange. So it is a revolutionary new structure for how things work. And I think I kind of see it as being sort of a hybrid of getting money from a VC and an ICO. I think this has the benefits and community building aspect of an ICO, but then you're getting your money from a VC, so an accredited VC.
And what was your process like in terms of gaining the funding. You guys built the product first. You had a working product, which isn't too common, unfortunately, in the cryptocurrency space. But you guys had a working product, and then what did you do after that?
We had some people in the crypto community who were already big fans of the site and who had even thought about investing before we decided to tokenize. And then Sam has always been heavy into blockchain. He actually paid his way through college by mining Bitcoin from his dorm. So I think finally there was just a eureka moment. The DNA and the block.one team were very enthusiastic about it, wanting to see a tokenized Wikipedia. And we were like, yeah, we're friends with the founder of Wikipedia. We might be able to pitch this to him. And they're like, yeah, that would be amazing. So we pitched it to Larry, and Larry's like, I'm in.
Okay.
He's also someone who was really into crypto from early on. He's really enthusiastic about the technology. Like I was saying, he felt like this is what Wikipedia is missing.
Do you have any numbers about the monthly active users on Everipedia at the moment?
It fluctuates around, up and down, about 3 million monthly uniques right now.
Wow.
Vodcast, we try to several times we've broken into top 1,000. We're usually hovering around top 1,000. But sometimes we'll get a huge viral hit or something and things can go crazy. But
so essentially you have the user base established to be able to vet this proof of this tokenization concept that you guys are going to launch, right? And that's going to be enough people to basically make this go viral when it gets there.
It's already happening. Just the fact that basically the EOS community is now the Everipedia community.
Yeah.
So our community and our number of pages and our number of contributors are just skyrocketing right now, and everyone on the team is just really focused on training right now. Training new users.
So that's a good point. So you did actually observe a increase in monthly active users since joining the EOS community.
Not just the traffic, like I'm saying, it's also about the actual size of the community.
Yeah.
Because even with a small community, we can get a lot of traffic just because we can we can fill the gaps that Wikipedia leaves.
And what kind of gaps are there? Or go ahead.
All over the place. Rappers is a huge gap. It's funny. Like I used to say, just like Rap Genius became Genius, we could have started Rapipedia and then become Everipedia, because all of the biggest pages, I think the top 10 biggest pages of the site's history, 5 of them are rappers. And it's because minorities have a harder time getting on Wikipedia, so rappers tend to be minorities. And then journalists. Wikipedia doesn't cover news, so we launched Everipedia News, which is a really, really necessary platform. We think of it as something that can help to regulate Reddit and Twitter. And we actually inspired Wikipedia to launch something called Wiki Tribune.
What is that exactly?
It's unclear, but it seems like they're kind of recognizing that it's weird that Wikipedia doesn't cover news.
So rappers have a profile now on Everipedia.
A lot of rappers, I can tell you so many rappers who had their Everipedia page long before they had their Wikipedia page. And they'll beat us in the Google search now, but we'll still come in second place. And we have a much better product. We build a much more interesting interactive page because we're Web 2.0. So
okay. Well, I think Kevin and I are gonna go on Everipedia and trying to find the Little John page on Everipedia. So we're interested in that.
Yep, almost.
Well, that will probably just be an import from Wikipedia. Like I said, we started by importing Wikipedia, so we have a bunch of stuff like that. But I think the highest traffic page in the site's history is Cardi B. We had a page for Cardi B about a year and a half before Wikipedia had a page for her. And our page is just way, way better. To this day, our page is just much, much better for Cardi B.
Cool. What would you say? What are the future plans for Everipedia? Where is it going in terms of drawing more users in. The average user will start on Wikipedia and they may not see anything wrong. How can we port them over to Everipedia?
Well, until we announced the tokenization plans, we had I don't think we had any Wikipedia people in our community. But now that is starting to change. Now we are starting to get a steady inflow of Wikipedia people who heard about it through EOS or heard about it through like crypto channels.
Is there any censorship on Wikipedia platform?
Yeah, well, I mean, Wikipedia has the notability requirement, so the vast majority of pages that are created get deleted. For example, someone actually made a very nice, very detailed page about me in 2013, and it got deleted.
Interesting. And with the...
It didn't even get deleted. I got actually redirected to the page for Genius. And it's funny because now Everipedia has a Wikipedia page, so it's like, why aren't you redirecting me to the Everipedia page? Like, do you guys realize how stupid your thing is? Like, why not just have more pages? Like, recognize... Think about how Facebook is. You know, like Facebook is trying to create a virtual world. So what about creating a virtual wiki world?
That's a good point. Yeah. And what should folks who are watching, what should they do next to get involved in Everipedia? What would you like folks to do?
Well, hit me up, because right now it's invite only. So you have to give me your email and I can send you an invite. But we have a Telegram group, and then we have a Facebook group called Everipedia Editors. But I know that crypto people hate Facebook. I still love Facebook. I'm never going to stop loving Facebook. I know they're stealing my data. I don't give a fuck. But we also have the Telegram group, and it's not hard. If you really want to join us, you can join us. But we're making it kind of tough. We used to just let everyone join, but we decided to kind of make it so that you have to earn it at least a little bit.
Seems to work. That's how.
We don't want to turn into Wikipedia. Like, you know, it can't be like Animal Farm where the pigs start walking on their legs. So gotta watch out for that.
Well, yeah, and I'm excited to get the EOS Go page up on Everipedia, so we'll have to hit you up with our emails.
Yep.
And we're also excited to help other folks in EOS sort of get involved with Everipedia. It looks like a great. I love the GIFs on there, and the media. It's more media centric, is what I take away from Everipedia. It's more engaging.
Yeah, it's more fun. Just think about how much more fun the internet has gotten. And I was at the gym today. I was actually thinking to myself of the tragedy of Craigslist too. Like, any time that there are tens or hundreds of millions of people using an ugly, boring website, that's a tragedy. Because these are people who, if they were using a website that was just fun, they'd be having more fun. They'd be happier. So, like, all these people are using Craigslist. All these people are using Wikipedia, and it's just not as fun. Like, you know, use Facebook. At least I think it's fun. Or certainly, I think that one a lot of people won't agree with me, but I think everyone will agree with me. If you use Instagram, it's fun.
Yeah,
so
and
everything should be as fun to use as Instagram.
Everipedia looks great too. Anyways, thanks, Mahbod. We love talking to you and Everipedia, and we're looking forward to actually emailing you and getting a page for EOS Go up on there, like Kevin said. So,
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. Keep rocking, guys. June is going to be a crazy month.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
Great. It's going to be a lot of fun too. We're excited. Thank you, Mahbod. It's good to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
Great to meet you.
All right. Take it easy. Should I hang up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, man.
See you later.
Looks like Mr. Cox is on the line here too, Kevin.
Wow. Hey, Mr. Cox, he's quick. Hello, sir. I believe your mic is unmuted, I should say.
Well, yeah, I'm unmuted, and I have two microphones. I've got this one here, and I've got this one here.
Oh.
So I'll try them both, and you tell me, this one's better. So this is microphone number one right now.
Sounds good.
And then I've got
microphone number two right here.
This one sounds better. What do you think, Kev?
It sounds more professional. It does sound a little better.
Interesting, because the new one is this one. It must be the position. It must be that the gap. Now, if I were eating this microphone and like really there, it might be more of a contender. But this way, we're relaxed, and we're engaged, and I got my list of questions. Thank you for collecting those, Kev. Huge, awesome. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's intro the segment. So we had Mr. Cox here from a very good, well-known company. We also, I don't know what to say, Thomas. So
let's just say I'm active in the EOSIO software space, and I have a lot of knowledge and opinions about things, and I'm happy to answer questions to the best of my limited and humble ability, bearing in mind I am not a spokesperson for any company, and not even necessarily for myself, but I do my best.
But you are the holder of the golden goose.
Okay, sure.
We're making that joke after the wonderful videos that we played on air here with Eleanor Ostrom governing the Commons.
Yes.
We enjoyed those.
What a great resource.
Thank you. But yeah, we're glad to have you on, and I know you would like to make this sort of a series. You'd like to come on regularly, maybe even every week, and
until
talk to
you run out
everybody.
of questions. Absolutely.
That might never happen. Yeah.
Who knows? Let's just say that it's a whole lot easier for me to just show up at a regular date and time and take questions that you've accumulated from the community. Easier for them to tune in, easier for me to show up. So I'm happy to do this. We'll see if it works. I imagine it probably will.
Did you get any interesting questions, Thomas?
Everybody's questions are interesting. I don't know if I'll be able to answer them, although of course I'll do my best. So let me pick it up. I'll just dive in.
Sure.
Yeah.
And let us know if you need to share the screen as well, and we can make that happen.
Do you have the written questions in a form that you feel like sharing on the screen? I'm much more of a reader than a listener, so if I were watching the recording, I'd be like, can I see the questions? But if you're not set up for that, it's fine.
I don't think we're set up for that at the moment.
That's fine. Maybe next week.
Yeah.
So as you see, I got a full sheet of questions
Good. Yeah.
from the community. A little duplication, but we'll do our best. And the first couple are from David P. of EOS 42. Hey, David. Very glad to have you guys involved in the candidate block producer community, by the way. EOS 42 is a huge contributor. Very glad to have you. Questions having to do with leasing functionality and leasing tokens. There's been, ever since the very first white paper last summer, we've talked about or hinted at having some kind of ability to rent tokens. That is, if you don't want to buy them or you don't feel the need to buy them. And so that makes people wonder, well, so how does that going to happen exactly? Because now we're at the point where there's code and you can run it at home, and and there's not a command right now to rent or lease tokens. So what's going to happen? And the short answer is we've got a very tight timeline to release code here by the late March, early April timeframe. Our Q1 release is imminent, and we're working very hard to get that out. And the roadmap calls for no new functions to be introduced between that code drop and the go live in June. So between this Q1 release is coming in the next few weeks, and at the beginning of June go live, there should be, knock on wood, no new functions. And I can tell you there is no lease function in the Q1 release. So if you add these together, you should see no lease function in June either, although stranger things have happened. So that means there will not be a system level contract call that would enable leasing, which means you have to roll it yourself in some sort of distributed application, which really ought not be all that hard, actually. I had a really interesting talk with Bart, who folks who are close to the project know is one of our back-end programmers and working on very closely with Dan on the blockchain core code. And we said, how would that work anyway, we wonder? And we actually lined it out, and I would say wrote it on a napkin, but I actually had a notebook with me. So I wrote it here in this right here notebook, outlined some thoughts on how you might go about writing a smart contract or set of smart contracts to do leasing. But you're not going to get system level calls in the EOSIO software that I can see anytime between now and the June drop.
And for everyone, you shared those steps and those notes on Telegram.
On Telegram, and that made it into an EOS Go update. Yay, EOS Go.
Yeah.
So if folks want to check the EOS Go forums and or the EOS Go announcement channel, you can get that whole right up there, and that might turn into a Medium posting or something else someday. And so the question that from David had to do with the leasing functionality as a contract, as a system contract, and also whether it might be a full DApp, and will definitely not be a DApp. To the best of my knowledge, I don't see us delivering any full distributed applications that are consumer-facing in June, unless there's something that's so obvious I'm just not thinking of it. And by that, I mean something with a front end and a back end and smart contracts and web pages and the whole bit. There will be some functionality that'll be web-based, but in terms of the kinds of things people think about for a commercial distributed application, we're really looking to the community to develop those. So no full DApp for leasing, to the best of my knowledge. And there was another leasing. Yeah, Marcus asked a related question about leasing DApps, and no, nothing new there. And if people are on chat, or if they're like typing in questions or they're typing in comments to either of you guys, and you want to read one of them out loud and like quiz me, if people want to drill in, go right ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next question.
Oh, so
good. You answered one of our questions. We're going to ask you later on if that would be okay. If some of the viewers who are on here want to ask questions.
Of course.
Certainly. Okay. Cool.
Yes. Yeah. The more interactive, the better.
So back to leasing. You're not going to deliver it for June, but it's in the pipeline.
Well, I won't say it's necessarily in the pipeline, but rather I want to highlight the fact that once a chain launches in June, one or more, who knows, there'll be at least one mainnet. At that point, it becomes a self-sustaining community with an open source repository, whereupon even if, say, block.one were to write something, it'd be up to the community whether to adopt it or not.
Yeah.
And somebody else could write a piece of code and say, I want to add this to the EOSIO.system contract, and here it does leasing. Implement this, and then the community would vote on it, and then the block producers would have the 30-day countdown to roll it forward and add it to the system. So,
and of course,
who knows what happens after June? And
it's obviously it could be the possibility that since it is open source, you guys could make pull requests too as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and if someone's asking if leasing is on the technical roadmap, it's not currently, because that's not how we do roadmaps.
Yeah.
So that would be a feature rather than a use case. And we talk about user problems in long-term strategic direction in the strategic roadmap. And last I checked, leasing wasn't one of them. That doesn't mean it couldn't show up tomorrow, but it's not there today. Let's see. A lot of curiosity about the Constitution and if we can have a draft or some meta rules. I'm so glad that came up. It's really important for us here. Soon after at the same time as or soon after this Q1 release, I think we've got to put out at least one draft of the Constitution, maybe a couple competing drafts, certainly one. And it'll probably be very short. I'm working on one now, and it may or may not be the one that gets released. We'll see. There is spirited internal work afoot. And of course, Dan Larimer has written extensively on blockchain constitutions over the past several years. So if people are curious what this thing might look like, you have only to read that, because those of us working on the Constitution, of course, are working from that as our starting point. I will add, as people are asking questions about some of the meta rules, here's what I want folks to know about regarding smart contracts and Ricardian contracts and the Constitution, because these all go together. There's a professor named, I want to say Lessing. This is going to be an important one to get right. Lawrence Lessig. produced something back in 1998. He published an article, and he called this the New Chicago School Theory of how behavior is constrained in social systems. And the New Chicago School Theory posits 4 major forces that are at work on all of us to help shape and control our behaviors. One of which, of course, is market forces. And if you're a long-time blockchain fan, as I am, or let's say a libertarian, as I am, you're a big fan of market forces. And even if you're not a fan of them, they still affect you. But that's not the only one. I mentioned there's 4. Markets are 1. Number 2 is the law. And in our case, the law would be the Constitution. And I will add the text of the Ricardian contracts. I'll drill into that in a second. Number 3 is social norms. And then number 4 is architecture and the actual physical constraints of the system. For instance, if you say, I want to have a blockchain, but I want to be able to delete things, all I can do is pat you on the head and hand you a lollipop, and I'm saying, so I'm really sorry, but architecturally we don't do that. It's a blockchain. It's an immutable ledger. Let me explain what immutable means. Even if we burn the data and it's not showing up in the current state, it's still in the transaction log, which is forever.
Yeah.
So no, you can't delete things. And that's what I mean by architectural constraints. Is there's some things you must do and there's some things you can't do. And what you choose to put into code becomes a huge force on how things develop. So of these 4 things, market forces, the law and the contracts, social norms, and the code, all 4 are in play all the time, especially on the EOS blockchain, because EOSIO software empowers social norms in a way that other blockchains don't. And that has to do with how the smart contracts are arranged. So I'm going to do this visually now. So we've got market forces here, coming from the north, if you will. I'll have the law coming in from my right. I'll have the code coming in from my left, and then we'll have social norms kind of coming up from below as this sort of, the context, if you will, sometimes you don't even notice it because you're just so used to it, like a fish in the water. That's just how things are. Okay, so let's look at what that means in terms of behavior. If you can find a loophole in the code that allows you to do something that socially is frowned upon in Bitcoin world, out there in these other blockchains, too bad, hey, you got away with it, because the code is the law and whatever happens, happens. And if people don't like it, that's too bad.
Yep.
And that's a very sort of anarcho-capitalist, heartless, highly deterministic, young adolescent male approach, frankly. And I say that because I used to feel that way very strongly myself back when I was younger.
If you lose your private key, too bad, type of thing.
Yeah, you lose your private key, too bad. Oh well, your $10 million worth of Bitcoin are at the bottom of some dump in England somewhere in your hard drive that you recycled 3 years ago.
True story.
Oh well, yeah, one of many actually. Okay, but that's in the outside world. And these other non-EOSIO blockchains that don't have our governance and don't have our design elements. So we are baking into the platform arbitration. Let me explain how this works. If something occurs and the code allows it, right? The executing code's over here. The Constitution doesn't. Let's say the Constitution doesn't explicitly forbid it, but it's very questionable. And the social rules are that's totally uncool. Somebody can then file an arbitration case against whatever just happened. Say somebody sold something and it turned out to here's a CryptoKitty, and what they sold you was like a screenshot of a CryptoKitty, not an actual CryptoKitty. And I point out that CryptoKitties run on Ethereum, not on EOS, but I'm making up an example. It's like I thought I was buying a real one, and maybe it was or it wasn't clear in the contract what you were getting. But they can still file an arbitration claim against you. Okay, great. Now a human being that's been pre-selected by, you and the other party have to agree to arbitration before you even get onto an EOSIO blockchain. So you've already agreed to have arbitration. And your contract probably has an arbitration clause in it saying which forum you'll use. So you go to that forum and they assign you whoever the next arbitrator is. And they're going to look at the details of your case, and they might roll it back and say, you know, refund his money. We think that this was not a clean deal. They might say that. And if that's what they say, you have a choice. You either give them back the money, or maybe your account gets frozen, or maybe the money's returned forcibly. You know, and this is where you have to choose, you know, do I value my reputation and go, gosh, I'm sorry, I'll learn better, I'll do better next time here, I'll be a good player moving forward, or you're going to try and do some, you know, old school crypto quasi theft thing, and in which case, well, you're probably going to get your account frozen, and in which case you'll have to say to the people buying, don't buy from people who don't have strong identity and or don't have skin in the game, don't have some sort of performance bond, don't have a balance in escrow. We're probably going to see a lot of escrow used for purchases like this.
And there's a good chance, I think you mentioned that in your short constitution, that arbitration will be part of.
Absolutely. That's like clause number 5 in the short version.
Okay, so no spoiler there. I think that's a pretty good one that we can bank on.
Oh, we've been talking about that since way back. Absolutely. There will be arbitration. We're working, in fact, on finding volunteers who would like to be trained in arbitration. The current plan is to use the International Rules of Dispute Resolution from the International Dispute Resolution Center. And we have some more reading on that. Go ahead.
And those volunteers will be open.
I say volunteer. I say volunteer only in the sense of that I'm not paying anybody to be trained.
Gotcha.
So I'm not saying that you will never be paid, though, because any sort of difficult or interesting or valuable arbitration deserves a professional or semi-professional arbitrator, and even an amateur should get paid if there's any duration of time involved. In a good arbitration case, takes time. It could take weeks. You've got to give people time to respond to requests for information. You got to read through the details. You have to write a very detailed ruling, and your ruling is only binding on the people involved in that case, although other arbitrators might look at it and be inspired by the direction you're setting. It starts to create these social norms that are relevant.
Is there any criteria for the pool of arbitrators that will be used?
It's being mostly organized by people in the community. I'm doing my best to help bootstrap that. And so criteria right now are, you feel like it's something that really, you know, it calls to you in your heart that arbitration is something you'd like to do, that you feel you can be calm-headed and dispassionate and methodical. And maybe you even got some training in dispute resolution or conflict management. Those would all be lovely things.
Cool.
And the whole arbitration thing will come rolling out here in the incoming weeks as we get further down that development path.
And any interested volunteers, where should they go?
Well, I think we should have an arbitration forum on EOSGo.io. Perhaps you know someone who can help make that happen.
Oh, we'll have to look around, see if we can find that person.
Find somebody like the two of you. So that's a very long answer to the question about drafting rules for the Constitution and how disputes get resolved.
Now, just Thomas, I know you've said this before. You're a big fan of having several meta rules and a lot of different rules that will follow from that, and that's
right. So one of the meta rules that I'm going to be advocating for, that I hope makes it out in the draft, that the community can then adopt, is a meta rule on the nesting layers of it's not, let's see, how do I describe this? Imagine you've got the EOSIO mainnet that the community is out there running, and it's got a very simple arbitration clause in it. And then you might have a group of game DApps, like a bunch of, you know, online gaming is a big deal. So there might be a lot of online gaming folks who all want to like have a set of rules together for their cluster of DApps. And if you have a DApp and you want to be part of the cluster, you got to come and talk to the group and say, yeah, we'll include you. And they might have their own constitution. Mm-hmm. Right? Now it's nested inside the other one. So if there's any conflict, the bigger one rules. But in the white space, we want to leave a lot of freedom for people to create their own communities and sub-communities. So I can easily imagine a gaming maybe several gaming groups, inside of which there might be a subgroup for, I'm making this up here, but game masters, people who are actively, creating certain kinds of things. And they, amongst themselves, might set up a rule that says one person, one vote. Now, EOSIO as a chain doesn't do that today. The current logic says that it's one token, one vote, right? But that doesn't mean that inside your governance, inside your little enclave that you've created 2 or 3 levels up, that you couldn't have, well, it's one person, one vote. Then you'll say, well, how do we establish that? Well, you have to have strong identity. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, you better figure that out. But there's a lot of identity DApps coming. There's a lot of identity work out there. There's a website called oneworldidentity either .com or .org, I forget, that is a clearinghouse for identity work, and there's 225 companies and initiatives listed working on different aspects of online identity. It's a hugely fertile space. So
is it possible that those software companies in the identity space can be an oracle, can just be a lookup?
Boy, there's all sorts of ways to do it.
Yeah.
All sorts of ways. I know I was playing around with, there's a service called HooYou, and I always forget how to spell it. It's either HUYOO or HOOYU. It's one of the two. And for $5, you can pay to have somebody's identity verified. So if I'm thinking to myself, this guy Blue Jays, I don't think his parents named him Blue Jays. I think that's like a nickname.
It's a pretty good chance.
So you never know. I don't judge, but yeah, maybe I want to get into some sort of really serious long-term, financial or business relationship, and I just want us to know each other. So I'll put in $5 and it'll send you a link to prove who you are to them, and then it just shows me a yes or no, you proved yourself. And you put in $5 and you pay to have me identify myself. And so we never see each other's, identifying documents. We get this trusted third party who professionally does verifications. And you can even, when you request it, ask different levels of rigor in that request. And so I actually requested that I identify myself, and it turns out I can only 99% identify myself, which was a little shocking because I was pretty sure I knew more than that. So you have to set your threshold of how much certainty you want out of it. And that's just one example of one commercial service, and there's a bunch of them.
Are you saying, Thomas, and I'm sort of reading in between the lines here, that EOS will not have a baked-in identity, but it may have other interrelationships for identity?
There's nothing on the roadmap, and there's nothing in the code in GitHub. If you would look to right today, there's nothing in there requiring you as a human being connecting to an EOSIO blockchain, if you either have an account because of the ICO distribution, or if you just wanted to get a new account after the chain launched, there's nothing in there requiring you to prove your humanity or which human you are. Nothing in the code today. Now, in terms of long-term direction, if you read Dan Larimer's writings, you'll find that there's a lot of interest in having people validate that they have an identity and that the identity lasts over time, and it might even be your real human name. There's different schools of thought. You could just have an online pseudonym. Some people would have you say, you could just be Blue Jays forever, and I never know your real first name. Mm-hmm. But that might be enough because you've been online for 20 years, and you've been involved in multiple projects, and lots of people who I know trust you implicitly, and so enough of that adds up, and you're probably pretty comfortable. And then there's other people who are like, no, I want a real life, I want your face, and I want your real name, and I want your birth certificate, whatever. And did I mention that we have a very large space here with a lot of room for different ways of going?
Mm-hmm.
So, certainly do. Yeah, and I know we need to let Thomas, there was many more questions for Thomas to answer, but real quickly, Thomas, what is your ETA on the Constitution? And we get a lot of questions about that.
I thought I'd be further along, but I started working on a meta rule posting today, and I actually talked to Dan about it when I was out in Blacksburg last week, and I said, Dan, I think I want to just put out some stuff, and he said, I don't want to stop you doing something you want to do. So apparently in my function as a community member, I get to do this.
Cool.
So look for something. I'm hoping this week, if I don't get derailed on some other even more pressing issue. I won't promise it'll be pretty or even accurate, but it'll be something. It'll be something that'll spark conversation for sure. And we might need a separate Telegram channel for it, and we might need a separate EOS Go forum for it. Like the drafts of Constitution articles and discussions of them. And by the way, if you don't think this could get pretty voluminous, go to the library and check out your own copy of the Federalist Papers. Okay, conversations about constitutions can be very detailed and very lengthy. And did I mention we're going live June 2nd?
And of course, it's a living document in a sense.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah, not only does the community have to decide which constitution, because there might be more than one offered, it can be changed by a vote of token holders and the actions of the block producers. So every community really does need to have the ability to steer itself, and that's certainly going to be true for the EOSIO software blockchains that we imagine the community will launch June 2nd.
Cool.
Some question came in on VC funding. I can say with confidence that the VCs do not talk to me, so I can't give you anything definitive. I can tell you my sense of it is that the VC partnerships that have already been announced were partnerships between EOSIO, the maker, block.one, and just read this for yourself out there in the press, and at least two outside groups, the Galaxy folks and the what's the other one? Future? Tomorrow
Futures.
Yeah, and each of them are creating these special funds that are dedicated to funding DApps, and they will obviously make their own decisions, and they'll obviously just decide for themselves how they're going to publicize things. So since I'm not engaged in that, I can't tell you what they're going to do. But you're more than welcome to email vc@block.one and get on the radar of our clearinghouse folks, who I believe will connect you with the underlying VCs.
I just wanted to correct myself. I think it's actually Tomorrow Ventures.
Tomorrow Ventures. Right. Another question on block.one developed DApps. What can we expect? Nothing in June. Let's see. Well, how do we prevent big stakeholders from controlling multiple block producers and eventually taking over the network? And is voting sufficiently proven to prevent this from happening? And that question comes up quite a bit, and my answer will be imperfect and tentative. And the short answer is it's very hard to prevent that sort of thing, and the countermeasures are as yet unproven because we're not live. So ask me again in July how it's working, and then we'll have an answer for you. The countermeasures include the following. Number one, it's probably in the best interests of the vast majority of token holders to have independent block producers who are not all controlled by the same entity and who are not colluding. Number two, the Constitution will require you to agree to only make truthful statements. And number three, a lot of the block producers are stating very clearly, I am, financially independent and not controlled by a whale. So a couple things might transpire then if we play this forward. Someone can say, well, I am controlled by a whale, but vote for me anyway. And I don't know if the community would go for that. Maybe they would. I don't think so. Or they might be secretly controlled, but lie about it and say, oh, I'm not controlled when they are. Which, if you can prove it's true, demonstrates a violation of the Constitution, which could result in fines and penalties, up to and including a confiscation of tokens and loss of block producer status. Potentially, depending on how the community wants to punish that kind of thing. So if the community is committed to not being whale controlled, the community has some tools to do that.
And to clarify for those who don't know, whale is just a wealthy individual or group of individuals
who own a lot of a particular token and therefore have a lot of influence on a platform. So it used to be we had one countermeasure was a 6-month lockup for token voting, but that's no longer the case. That rule has been deprecated. So we're now allowing anybody to vote tokens if those tokens are staked for either CPU or bandwidth. So that's how you vote these days. So that one countermeasure has been removed, and there's a whole backstory on why that is, but I won't get into that in the time we've got. So how do we prevent the whales? A combination of well, it's the same forces, right? We've got a little bit of code, but not much. There's not much you can do in the smart contract code to prevent, whales controlling block producers and colluding. But you can use the blockchain to have your immutable ledger of proof of who did what, and so that you take that proof and hand it to the arbitrators who use the Ricardian contracts and the Constitution to enforce things. And so there might be some market pressures coming in to push in the direction of maybe some whale control of some block producers. But I believe we are equipping the community with more than enough tools that if the community wants independent block producers, the community will get their independent block producers. And there will be hopefully ways to test for collusion and test for over control by whales. The other countermeasures are already in place, and that's just the token distribution has been very broad.
Yeah.
It's a year long. I'm not supposed to talk about the token distribution, so let me drop that. But that is one of the countermeasures. It's one of the purposes of having a very long period of token distro.
Well, about the block producers, I know the next question on the list there, it's about what kind of institutions or companies do you see as being block producers in your estimation?
You're jumping over one other, and that is also by Marcin, I think. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. If the Constitution could be treated as a legal document, and he had a question about third-party consultation. Whatever the Constitution is that gets adopted will be visible to you, because the adoption process is going to require voters to vote on specific documents, identifiable by their hash. So you can go find the Constitution, look at it. And if your question is, should I have a lawyer look at it first before I agree to it? I will always tell people, please, if you think you need a lawyer, go get one. I will tell you from painful personal experience, you never want to try to save money by hiring a cheap lawyer or skipping getting proper and useful legal advice. Always, if you think you might need that, maybe you probably do. And will the Constitution be legally enforceable? For instance, if we go from on-chain to off-chain enforcement, absolutely yes. And that is because we've had a number of people look at it. And the best legal thinking I've seen, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm persuaded that the rules of the blockchain are sufficiently clear that we would qualify as essentially a kind of a private club. In order to get in, you've got to buy EOS tokens or acquire them somehow. You have to sign this agreement, this Constitution, in order to participate, because if you aren't signing the Constitution or don't have some proof of you've agreed to the Constitution, your transactions won't be processed. So you have to do that, and whereupon you've agreed to these rules and to be arbitrated. And arbitration has been upheld in pretty much every country in the world.
Arbitration is a not only time saving but cost saving alternative to litigation, right? And it's almost
Absolutely
like a benefit to having.
I believe so. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been instances when arbitration clauses have been used to silence people or to short circuit maybe criminal law or appropriate civil law. So I'm not saying that arbitration is the cures all things. But in our case, it's the ideal thing because we have an international or transnational group who aren't all in one jurisdiction and all of whom or most of whose primary interactions are on this blockchain. And so if you have a dispute that arises from your interactions on the blockchain, you are going to be subject to arbitration because you said so, because you agreed to it in the Constitution, because if you didn't agree to it, you couldn't do a transaction.
That's right.
Okay, and if you care to look into it, you'll find that the International Center for Dispute Resolution and many other international organizations have decades of backstory and history on arbitration standing up when it's challenged in local courts. Local court will look at it. They'll see that you've signed a contract. You'll see that the contract called for arbitration. You'll see that there's an arbitrator's ruling, and they'll say, hey, our country signed one of several, like 187 different arbitration agreements from 187 different countries, saying that if you engage in international arbitration, it's binding in our country. So is it binding? Oh, yes, it is. And we're doing everything in our power to make it stick.
Essentially, they would need to hire lawyers to try and argue the opposite of that decision.
I don't think I would waste a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
So then we move on to who can be a block producer, and the short answer is anybody with a computer can try. You have to be able to run the EOSIO software. You have to then register your node using the reg producer command in EOSIO.system, which is the system level contract whereby people register their interest in being, that's how you raise your hand and say, I'd like to produce blocks, and it puts you into a system registry. And then the voters, when they vote against that registry. And so that's where you would look to see who the top vote getters are. Because reg producer puts you on the list, and then OK producer sticks of votes in there. And then there's your tally. And then you can sort that by number of votes, and the top 21 vote getters get to be block producers. And it could be you, which means you need to be able to run the software. That's it. So do you need to be an LLC? Do you need to be a C Corp, B Corp, individual contributor? You need to have a computer. Mm-hmm. You need to have a computer, and you need to be able to execute the reg producer command. And then you have to be able to get some votes. And I don't know how you do that.
Do we have those basic requirements, the hardware requirements to run the EOSIO software?
The basic requirements are in the README. The minimum to actually get it up and running on a test instance is, I think we're saying 8 gig of RAM and an i5 or i7 processor, Linux typically, or Mac OS. To be a block producer at the full system level with a mainnet, we don't know what's required, but we do know it's a single-threaded software, so there's a limit to how big you can get. A lot of RAM and probably 2 fast CPUs. Yep. And then you'll be competitive with everybody else.
And we know how Moore's law goes. Maybe in 5 years we'll have a block producer app on our phones, right?
Not even going to go there, man. Don't even know. We'll have quantum something at that point.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. Let's see. Any incentive for large companies to build on top of EOS early beside first mover advantage? Yeah, it's a great question on game theory. If people wanted to buy tokens, say some large company wanted to buy a bunch of tokens in order just to have access to bandwidth in the future, sure, I think that's a compelling idea. And I hope they're doing that now. I'd love to see a lot of large companies build large, widely used distributed applications on EOSIO software. In terms of how the gaming, if you want to buy game theory, or in terms of some sort of spreadsheet simulation, I'd probably want to talk to somebody one-on-one on that. And that was from Anthony. So Anthony, private message me and let's talk through your use case and see what we can come up with, because I think that's a kind of question other folks are going to have. Any DApps launching on the same day as mainnet? No idea. I do know that the mainnet, the boot sequence as of last week, we're revisiting it this week, but as of last week, the boot sequence does require that 15% of tokens be represented by people who've connected to the network and issued at least one command. So that might take 12 hours, 24 hours, I don't know, before most of the major functionality gets unlocked. So if you launch a chain but no one connects to it, you won't actually have a functioning chain, because a lot of the functions are locked until users show up and verify their presence. So in terms of DApps launching, they might have to wait until the connections happen for the full functionality to unlock. So it might be a day or two. We know Everipedia has already announced they're going to be on. I know that there are some others who have announced. I don't know how far along they are. And of course, nobody knows who's in stealth mode except the people in stealth mode. So I don't have a list for you of DApps launching on right after mainnet launch. other than the ones who've already announced. Their publicity is theirs, so they'll tell you. And if you want a comprehensive list, I suggest going to one of the information clearing functions like EOS Go, who are very likely to be one of the best places to go for lists of distributed apps. Last question on my list, additional details regarding the recovering of stolen funds. This is a tremendously important question and deserves some extended treatment. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go into this in some detail. And for the example, because we've got to have a specific example in order to work it through. Think about the DAO hack where you had a contract with a bunch of tokens in it, and somebody exploited a bug and extracted, I think it was $50 million worth of tokens from that account to a different account also on the blockchain, same chain. And the way it was set up, it was frozen for 30 days, which is a very wise move, by the way. Any large token movements, you should write them to have a certain vesting period to slow things down. Time delays can be your friend for large movements of funds. And that's on you as a developer. So that was in place. And so that's kind of what was so comical and tragic about the DAO hack, is everyone could see it happening, and the tokens were frozen, and they were like, had 30 days of being stuck in the thief's account. So you could see them all just sitting there, but there's no way to get them back because there was no mechanism for that. So imagine that playing out exactly the same way on an EOSIO software blockchain. Within a few days or even hours or minutes of it starting to happen, you start to notice it happening. You, whoever you are, let's say you're the author of the app, you can file a request with a block producer, probably through an arbitrator, saying, I need this code frozen. I want this contract frozen, and I want that guy's account frozen because he's stealing these tokens. And, well, that notice would be sent to all parties affected, and the block producers can look at the totality of what's there and what the arbitrator has to say and go, yeah, this looks like it should be frozen. And the block producers are going to need to come up with some guidance from us, a mechanism for fast acting freezes, because it's okay to freeze something, but it's not okay to change something in a hurry. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be like, undoing a transaction before you've had a chance for everyone to have their case heard. So in our instance, the DAO hack is starting to happen. Let's say $50 million worth of EOS tokens have been moved. You can see the old contract. You can see the new contract. It's all sitting right there in front of you. An arbitrator is going to say, I agree that this looks very fishy, and therefore I, the arbitrator, order the contract to stop it operating because it appears to be buggy, and I order this account to be frozen on suspicion of theft. And then the block producers, 15 of them would have to agree that that's a fully formed and technically correct order, and they would freeze everything. And then you're thinking, well, what if that was malicious? What if it shouldn't have been frozen? What if the arbitrator is like colluding and it's all just a plot? Well, guess what? You can arbitrate that. Yeah. And at some point you run out of corrupt arbitrators, start running into honest arbitrators, and then the whole plot unravels. And it's, by the way, it's all on a blockchain. It's all immutable. The record's all there to be seen. And let's take the corrupt arbitrator back out of the equation. Let's say it's just the DAO hack all over again. Within a couple days to a week, you assemble all the information. You attempt to reach out to the thief and say, so what's your side of this? Can you please explain to us why this is not theft? Because it sure looks like it to us. And then they never respond because they don't want to be, they don't want to identify themselves or talk to you. They're hoping to get away with it. So he defaults on the judgment. The judgment comes in, return the tokens. That goes in a 30-day queue, and there's no appeals for 30 days. Then the block producers literally write a special transaction that moves money from one fund to another. Boom, it's refunded.
And something like this is just the arbitration enables a human to come in and make the decision, and a group of humans, and that's the only thing that can be basically uncorruptible, I guess you would say.
Well, everything's corruptible, but it's corruption resistant, and it gives us a layer in which we're not just dependent on the code being perfect all the time.
That's right.
And you'll frequently see people say, well, the code is the governance, and if the code allows it, then that's what's supposed to happen. That's the philosophy of other blockchains. It's not the design philosophy of the EOSIO ecosystem. Our system says that the intention of the contract outranks the execution of the code. And that's why there's a Ricardian contract that goes along with your code. And the Ricardian contract will say something like, tokens should move under these circumstances, or as I request this software to do this thing, I submit my tokens, I want this to come out of it. And unless the contract says that you're allowed to steal stuff, that intention's not present. Mm-hmm. And so the $50 million worth of tokens, it's like, there's nothing in this contract that enables you to do that. And so I, as an arbitrator, if I were arbitrating that one, it'd be clear cut. I would say, yeah, no, this is completely incorrect. The code is wrong. The contract is not being honored. I issue my ruling, and the block producers check it, and there's nothing broken in my ruling, and they get their 15 votes in favor, and it goes in a 30-day queue, plenty of time for people to inspect it and look at it. 30 days after I enter the order, or whoever the arbitrator is enters the order, it happens, and the money's refunded. And so
in EOSIO, you mentioned the freezing. That's there, and then there will also be other functions as well. Like
correct.
Yeah.
Freezing is at the code level, and that's how block producers know. Here's basically the blacklist of frozen accounts, and you get on the blacklist through a vote of 15 of the 21 block producers agreeing that a freeze is appropriate under the circumstances that are present here. And then if you can explain why you shouldn't be frozen, then you can get unfrozen. Again, you would need to persuade an arbitrator and then some block producers to unfreeze you.
And it handles when an account is frozen that it may not send, but will it also be able to receive? I don't know.
Oh, no. If your account is frozen, every transaction that tries to interact with your account doesn't happen. It gets dropped out of the mempool. Okay. You literally can neither send nor receive anything. It's as if you don't exist. You're dead to me.
So if you sent to that address, then you would lose your tokens?
No, that transaction wouldn't happen.
Okay.
Because a transaction that involves either sending to, from, or receiving to a frozen account is a transaction that does not occur.
Interesting.
Okay. Thomas, we could probably talk to you all night here if you're up for it here. So.
I've been known to. Those people who were there at the New York meetup, I talked for like an hour and 15 minutes in front of the crowd and 2.5 more hours at the bar. So I've proven my ability to talk endlessly on this subject.
Well, we want to make sure we promised a couple questions will be answered from the chat, and I'll read you one here if you're ready.
Great. Yeah, absolutely.
We have so how many block producers on Amazon Cloud or other clouds are too many? How can cloud centralization be avoided, especially at the start?
That's a great question. I think that as a voter, you should be asking for diversity of geography, diversity of political regime, because remember, block producers have jurisdictions. They have a physical presence. You probably don't want them all in the United States or all in North Korea or all in any one jurisdiction. So you should ask for geographical distribution. You should ask for legal jurisdiction distribution, and you should ask for technological distribution. Not too many Amazons, not too many Azures, and so forth. And so as a voter, I suggest you look for that, and I imagine the EOS Go lineup will let block producers tell you that, yes, we are on Amazon at the moment, but we're happy to switch if that's what you, the voter, want. Because remember, cloud systems are easy to move.
Yeah, another one here was about having a constitution on the DApp level. Does it make more sense to have it on the DApp level or on a general level?
Oh, I think we're going to have both.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to have an EOSIO blockchain-wide basic core constitution that covers everybody and is minimalistic as we can get away with, so that there's a lot of freedom for people to create their own additional rules that are appropriate for them. And then your DApp should have its own governance.
Okay.
potentially, or at least you should think about it. You should look at the Constitution and say, is there something missing here? Is there something that our Ricardian contracts don't really cover, but we want to express it as kind of our sense of how we're going to work? Does that make sense? So yeah, absolutely. You should totally feel free to have DApp level governance. Highly recommended.
Okay. Kevin, did you want to take any more? I know we would like to encourage our viewers to actually submit them beforehand, and that way...
I do a much better job answering questions when I have a chance to read them first.
Yes.
Well, and also you'll have a much better chance of actually getting your question answered here, since we are able to talk forever together. So, yes. Thank you.
Go ahead and answer. I've got 7 more minutes on my clock. I don't know how you guys are doing.
Sure.
I'm happy to keep going. We'll do a speed round here. I'll do like 1-sentence answers.
All right.
Until we run out.
Okay, how about this one? Do you think that the constitution of the EOSIO main blockchain on June 2nd will best represent a republic controlled by stake or a democracy controlled by popular vote?
Ooh, that's interesting. I suspect it's going to be a kind of a oligarchy of large token holders, because we're weighting vote by token, which is countable, not by identity, which at least at launch won't be all that easy to tell. If we tried to do one account, one vote, and you had 1,000 tokens, you could just create 100 accounts of 10 EOS each, and look, you just got all these votes. And rather than have people game things, we just go with what's there. And so we're going to see voting strength concentrated in large holdings. And if you look at the EOS scan and some of the other, there's some report out there, I can't remember where I saw it, that shows the distribution of EOS tokens. And apparently nobody owns more than 5%, except our crowd sale contract, which owns the ones that haven't been sold yet. But is that like, might 2 of those 5% accounts be owned by the same person or same entity? I don't know. But bear in mind that unless someone's got 50% or more, they're not massively controlling. I promised 1 sentence and I failed. So I think it's most like direct democracy, simply because there's not a federal level baked in. That's not to say that wouldn't be a very interesting amendment to offer.
Sure. Yeah. And let's go towards geographic diversity and somehow enforcing that, or having some kind of proof of location certificate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know that there's a lot of pressure on block producers to be as transparent as possible. And there's probably not a lot of upside to lying, especially since IP addresses, people can figure out where they are on the planet. And if you are a block producer, you have to talk to the 20 other block producers, and they're all going to know what your latencies are between you and them. And the whole point of geographic diversity, among other things, is to allow the turn taking of the 21 to move around the globe from, relatively adjacent nodes to each other. You don't want to be going like diagonally or like through the center of the earth back and forth to make really long latencies on purpose. You could really mess up the chain that way. We have a whole routing thing we're working on. Don't get me started. But if you want to enforce it, I would say appeal to the block producers' hunger to be voted for and to be transparent. And I promise you, the race for transparency is on. And the more transparent you are, the more trustworthy I think you're going to look to most voters.
Sure.
Thomas,
makes sense.
Just one question I had. Does it guarantee you a spot as a block producer if you held a lot of tokens and you could vote yourself in? Is there the chance that an arbitration ruling can basically take you out of that picture, or the community can say, well, you have maybe 7% of the tokens, but you just can't be a block producer?
I'm not aware of a social value that says a large holder couldn't also produce blocks. See, here's one of the things I didn't mention earlier about block producers and whales and all that, is there's just not that much money to be made as a block producer. This isn't Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin network is spitting out $18 million a day. Of course, people are fighting over that. And the more hash power you throw at it, the more of that chunk you get. So they're like fighting for a fixed pie. By contrast, under some of the scenarios that I've run, and I'm hoping we'll get a community spreadsheet pulled together to do some modeling. But if it's like a $6 token and the block producers vote themselves 2% inflation, this is from memory, so forgive me. I think it works out to about $500,000 a day for all block production awards total. Not 18 million, $500,000. That's not that much. And that's divided across 21 nodes, right? Not 3 major mining pools like on Bitcoin. So, wow, so I'm only going to get, a few tens of thousands of dollars probably for being a block producer in a given window of time. There's not a lot of, you can get more money with your massive chunk of cash that you might use to buy EOS tokens to buy yourself a block producer slot. You can probably get a better return like investing.
Yeah.
Well, not only
I think the S&P 500 is bringing in more than we're talking about here.
Okay. Good
so
point.
buying your way to block producer status is kind of a lot of money for a little return is the way it's looking right now. Block producer rewards should just be enough money to pay the block producer a reasonable fee for a modestly large server running in the cloud or running in a data center somewhere.
Sure, and of course
There's
the backup.
Just not enough money here.
The standby producers are also receiving part of the inflation as well.
Yes, the standby producers, the other 100 backup folks, are also getting a piece of that, which again spreads the money out over more people. So it's going to be very hard for you to get big chunks of money out of this system to justify a corrupt effort to get to it. It's like a lot of bees and very little honey.
And who determines
who
determines the percentage for inflation?
The inflation is capped at 5% annually.
Okay.
In the software. Now that, because it's in the software, it's configurable, and the community could vote at the constitutional amendment to raise it to some other number. But of course, why would they? Because inflation slowly devalues the value of your token.
That's right.
So the community's incentive is to have very low inflation. Mm-hmm. And as a block producer, you then vote on what percentage of that 5% you would be willing to make blocks for. So let's say you vote yourself 40%. 40% of the 5% is 2%. And we take the median of the winning vote of the winning block producers, and their median might be 2%. Let's just pretend. And so 2% inflation would go to block producers.
Interesting.
You can see why we need a spreadsheet, because trying to describe this verbally and you catch it, it's going to be a little hard.
I think you did a good job there. And basically you have, and let's also we'll move on to the last question for you, Thomas, and then we'll be out of time. But it's from Gustavo, and he's asking about Ricardian contracts. Could you give sort of a brief description of what they are and which tools we'll be using for Ricardian?
Right. So Ricardian contracts are written in English or the language of your community, and they contain machine-readable tags or markup that indicate which data fields map to inputs in a smart contract. So you have a smart contract and a Ricardian contract. What they'll have in common is the input parameters of the code should be flagged as specific portions of this human-readable English language, in my case, contract. And if you go to Ricardian contracts on the web, you'll see tons of examples. Okay, plus we're going to be releasing some examples. And so something like set producer, reg producer, it takes 2 arguments in the code. Well, there'll be a contract you can read that says what it means, and it'll have in it any additional expectations or limitations that society or we as the architects of the software want you to be agreeing to. So look for a long form article on that coming, I hope soon, maybe this week, because
awesome.
that's a really important question.
Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, we always appreciate having you on, Thomas. Thank you very much for everything, of course. And we will continue collecting questions for next week's show as well.
Yeah.
Great.
And you have 3 primary topics you'd like to answer questions about. Is that right?
I just wanted to put out some prompts for people to be thinking about. Yeah, governance questions, block producing questions, distributed application questions, inside of governance, arbitration issues, the Constitution. If you're confused about it and it's preventing you from moving forward in whatever you want to do, ask.
Sounds good. Yeah, and also if you put that Constitution out by the end of this week, we're going to have a lot of questions, I'm sure, next week.
I imagine so. Maybe I'll take vacation next week.
Oh, there you go.
Just kidding.
Thanks.
No vacation for me until June.
Right. I don't think anyone is. Yep.
Thanks,
well, thank
Thomas.
you, Thomas.
Yeah,
Yep.
really appreciate it, Thomas. And
Thank you.
See you later. Have a good one.
Bye.
Cool. That was wonderful. I think we all learned a lot.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Wow.
I think he's of the opinion that he can talk for a long time on these topics, and I think we noticed about ourselves that we can talk a lot about it too as well.
Well, I mean, yes, absolutely. And that's the thing about Thomas is when he talks, every other word you're going, what? Whoa, okay, that's interesting. And then you have to think about it more. So he gives you a lot of, it's good that we are recording this so we can go back and look at it again. And also we'll put timestamps in the recorded video as well of the different parts that we talked about. So when you see this live video and it's 2.5 hours long, for any of these live streams, we will always put those timestamps in there. And then we'll also further cut up the videos throughout the week so that you can go back and review, because there is a lot of information there.
That's right. There was quite a bit of information, and as like Kevin said, we will have separate videos. You can link that and just look at the segment on its own. Kev, why don't we just take a look at the news out there? I know we had some really exciting stories.
Yes, and we will we'll do another 20 minutes or so, Blue Jays. I know we're going over time, but it's a wonderful topic in Thomas, and we will never cut off Thomas Cox. You can guarantee that. So the news this week, there were 2 articles from the Roanoke Times, and Roanoke, Virginia is about an hour, I believe, an hour and a half south of Blacksburg, excuse me. I believe 45 minutes to an hour outside of Blacksburg. And so they are covering Dan and block.one because block.one is based in Blacksburg and because Dan is an interesting story. So the 2 articles, the first one was about Dan's journey, kind of coming up through how he got interested in blockchain, his prior experience as a software engineer. They also go a bit into his history about when he sort of relearned everything he knew, I guess as they put it in the article, where he sort of stepped back and he realized that he would like to sort of reinvent himself and rethink the way that he actually approaches the world. And so he sort of went through a deep dive of libertarianism and a bunch of other topics. And then he got involved in blockchain and talks all about his 2001 Nissan Altima and his struggles. And then, which, that stuff is interesting. Everybody wants to learn about someone as successful as Dan. And then now, of course, has a wonderful company, a large company in Blacksburg, Virginia, and they're producing phenomenal software that will probably, hopefully, change the world. So that article was very interesting. What are your thoughts there, Blue Jays?
This article is kind of almost like a personal profile of him, and it's just wonderful to see it done from a neutral perspective. I know Dan gets a lot of press for jumping projects and also different other negative things, and I think this is a really positive article with him being profiled as just a normal guy who's just happens to be really smart and really good at writing these types of software. So
that's a great point, and it's an interesting look from someone from the mainstream media, as we like to call them, but they're just regular folks who are not into this space, right? And they're trying to learn more about someone who is so involved in this space, and that's why the article is very interesting. There is no such thing as negativity. There are no ulterior motives from other projects, things of that nature. So if you are interested in Dan's story and you would like just an independent, neutral take, then you should certainly check it out. We will link that in the chat. And then the other article from the same newspaper, the Roanoke Times, they also had sort of a "What is blockchain" by Dan Larimer, I guess you could say. And so he sort of describes in very basic terms why blockchain is valuable. They go through, they do a practice where they talk about an Amazon transaction as if someone were to buy a blanket off of Amazon for $16.99, right? And then how Wells Fargo has to be the trusted intermediary that actually processes that transaction. Wells Fargo holds the ledger of all the bank account balances. They know that you have, say it's $1,000 in that bank account. And so they take out $16.99 off your $1,000, and then they credit it over to Amazon's bank account. And that's how it's done currently. Well, with blockchain, they basically describes for folks who are not used to blockchain that you do not need that centralized figure holding your money for you or holding the ledger for you. So therefore, you own all of your own value. The process can be much cheaper because you're not paying all those bankers and the large buildings and everything else. There's no business model surrounding your money. It's just you own your money on this independent ledger that is verified by all kinds of different independent parties, strangers, if you will. And that's so if you are looking to learn more about blockchain, or you're trying to describe it to someone who needs to get more involved, you should definitely show them this article. It does break it down in very simple terms. I was impressed.
Yeah, there was I like to follow Dan on Telegram, and there's that bot that basically anytime he posts, you can see what he's posted. And one of the things that he talked about was basically the world needs more EOS. The world needs EOS as if it needs more faster databases. And being in IT, we do need fast databases, and it's one of those things like, yeah, we need that. So at the end of the day, a blockchain is an immutable database, and it's something that you can't, like Thomas alluded to earlier, you just can't erase things. It's there, and it's transparent, and I guess this is something that what this article is trying to explain to the regular non-techies.
Right, and when Dan talks about in Telegram, when he talks about EOS transactions and quality of transactions and also the speed, so we're referring to old blockchains. So having a blockchain, having an independent ledger that's verified by people all around the world, there's a lot of latency involved. It's very hard, it's expensive because you have all these people that need to be compensated. And that's what Bitcoin basically is right now. You have people competing with their large computers to try and win Bitcoins every 10 minutes to win the block.
Yeah.
And that's what's different about EOS, and that's what Dan Larimer has invented. He has a system where instead the block producers are like representatives. They're voted in, and therefore they're incentivized to try and earn their right to produce those blocks.
That's right.
So therefore they are helping the network. They're putting money back into the network. They want to maintain those votes. It's like a political party, basically.
And they have community benefit projects and community engagement projects.
Yeah, exactly. And everything can be seen on blockchain. So if they were to try and steal some of the money or do something that would not help the network, anybody can verify it and see what is going on and therefore spread the alarm. And then that block producer can be voted out. As Thomas talked about with Bitcoin, it's like the Wild West. Because they're just competing with the strongest computers, it really turns out to be the richest people win with the most computers. And therefore, it's not really that decentralized because you have these very powerful groups that own a large part of the Bitcoin.
That's right. And they can produce electricity at a cheaper cost, really.
Sure, exactly. And we'll move on to Brock Pierce. Unfortunately, Brock Pierce was let go from block.one in his advisory role. He had kind of stepped back. Ian Grigg was talking about in Telegram how Brock Pierce has become so involved in his Puerto Rico project. He's helping set up. Puerto Rico is a great destination for blockchain companies right now. They have sort of reinvented themselves in the wake of their hurricane, and they're trying to attract technology companies and in a promising field. And so they are inviting blockchain companies by offering very low taxes, I believe even no taxes in some cases, when it comes to cryptocurrency, when it comes to trading, things of that nature. So Brock is down there. They are trying to build, I believe it's a city almost. And they're also starting businesses and trying to operate out of there. So he's been very busy. Now, this news came out, I believe, Wednesday. So it is fairly old news at this point. Unfortunately, it just, I guess from a standpoint of block.one, looking to be a business-to-business type blockchain, right? They want EOS to be a blockchain that Silicon Valley can say, wow, I'd like to be involved with this, right? It's a professional, serious blockchain. They have the technology that can run large-scale applications, and these applications can be indistinguishable from centralized alternatives. Therefore, you can easily compete. You can garner the attention of regular folks who maybe don't care about blockchain. They just want to have a website that works really well. Yeah. So block.one is serious about their goals. And unfortunately, because of the negative situation surrounding Brock and the way he presents himself, they had to let him go in order to sort of advance the company. It sounds like everything worked out well, and there are no hard feelings or anything of that nature. It's just part of the deal. And Brock is already busy with his next project anyway, so no concerns, right?
No concerns. I think it was best for both parties. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Yep, I agree with you there. And let's go on to the Google ad ban, and as well as Twitter. Joining Facebook in banning cryptocurrency ads. There's a good reason for this. It's because of all the ICOs. And an ICO, for those who are not familiar, is basically anyone can put up this website and say, we are building a great blockchain. You can send us your money and we will build this blockchain for you. It's all built on promises and hype and hope. Unfortunately, the nature of blockchain has been taken and sort of distorted. And because people can offer money in a decentralized way over the internet very easily, frictionless, it has become very popular. And people who are investing money in these so-called projects that will hopefully come to fruition, these people are hoping they can make money off their money. And that's why they throw all kinds of money at these so-called projects that may or may not actually turn out. So what happens is you have a lot of scams, right? And that's what's been going on, is these companies have been purposely putting up fake websites and taking lots of money from people. And there has been no regulation surrounding it because this is a very new industry, and governments are not quite sure how to deal with a decentralized currency that cannot really be regulated that easily in jurisdictions. So what are your thoughts, Blue Jays?
Yeah, I personally think that this is like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But I do agree with you. There is some consumer protection that needs to go on here, and it's probably for the best at this time. However, this is probably not something long term that would make any sense. There's going to be a lot of legitimization to this industry once things are not all scammy. Right. And right. Not everything is going to be that way. And at the beginning of the internet, it had the same type of perception, right? When the internet was being launched, it had that negative perception, and eventually we're here. And Google and Facebook and Twitter were born from that revolution. So I think it's a short-term move.
I agree. And for those who aren't familiar, the Google, Facebook, and Twitter have banned ads from any cryptocurrency. Because there are so many scams that were advertising through those mediums in order to gain more folks who would throw money at it, right? I actually have a personal story about this. I had a coworker, and she was talking about how she was thinking about buying Bitcoin, she told me, because she had seen an ad on Facebook. Okay. And she said, yeah, there's guaranteed returns. You put your money in and it's guaranteed returns. I was thinking, that's not Bitcoin. That doesn't sound right. She was actually talking about BitConnect.
Yeah.
This was a few months ago. And I thought to myself, this is bad news. I mean, this is not right, because as we know, BitConnect was actually a Ponzi scheme. It was a pyramid scheme, which is just a fine example of the scams that need to be taken out and eliminated. So this is, in my mind, it's a great move.
Yeah, and I'll refer you guys back to that funny meme it's on our forums now. You can look at that, and then there's Warren Buffett at the end. His advice was buy BitConnect.
Right, which is obviously it's a fake meme, and it was just subtitles that were interposed. Basically, for those who didn't see last week's show or see the GIF, Warren Buffett is doing this interview with Charlie Rose of CBS, but the sound is turned off, and so there's these fake subtitles underneath about him talking about buying all these scam coins and how he's lost billions of dollars. But he's like smiling because he's actually doing a different interview. He's having a good time, just like a lot of cryptocurrency people can be. So it's a funny GIF.
Yeah, don't buy BitConnect. That's not my personal recommendation at all. Does it even exist anymore?
I don't know. I haven't kept up with BitConnect personally, so I'm not sure. But let's move on to the G20. G20 says crypto is not a threat to the global economy at this time. A lot of folks are taking this as great news. I take it more as crypto is not developed enough, right? They don't have any actual use cases. EOS is going to be the first one. Of course, that's why we're here. We believe in it. And because it's fast enough and it has all the necessary features for people to actually adopt it and like it and use it. Current cryptocurrencies are just used more as people hoard them in the hopes that the value will go up. Yeah. And therefore, they're just completely a speculative asset. They're not used as an actual currency. And therefore, I think it makes sense why the G20 would not care about cryptocurrency. It's really just a fad. It's like Beanie Babies at this point. Would the G20 care about Beanie Babies? No.
Maybe CryptoKitties. The FSB's initial assessment is that crypto assets do not pose risks to global financial stability at this time. So that's from the FSB, which is the Financial Stability Board, and that's the quote from that website. So that was made, I believe, by the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney. So that was an interesting quote, and at this time is kind of interesting terminology there. It's good though. I mean, of all we've gone through in this space, it's good to know that these at least these FSB has that opinion.
Yeah, and what are your personal thoughts? Do you think crypto is beginning to be more widely adopted, or is it any further along than it really has been in the last couple of years?
I think there was a lot of hype there, and what we're beginning to see in the trends coming out, especially with EOS, is the move to utility type of tokens. This token is not merely just a currency, but it has some sort of value that's intrinsic in that token. And you look at the EOS token, it's going to have many different parts of value, right? We covered many of them on the Dan Q&A video, and he's illustrated how they are going to be given value: voting, storage, computation, RAM, right? Whatever else they decide to throw in there. So this is a utility token. It is not meant to have any values, just a currency. And
True.
I think that's where the industry should be going, in my opinion.
I think you explained it pretty well. That's exactly what's happened right now with cryptocurrencies. The value for Bitcoin or any of those other cryptocurrencies comes from adoption, which basically means that you need to have more people continually buying and hopefully using those cryptocurrencies. As we know, Bitcoin, for example, is not usable on a wide scale because it is way too slow. It's old technology. It's like having a Model T car. You're not going to keep up on the highway, right? So you can't process enough transactions for people all around the world to use Bitcoin to buy things. Also, the transaction fees become very expensive when you have a lot of users trying to use the network at the same time, so that it becomes clogged. So a utility token, where when you own tokens, you actually own a part of the network. It's like owning a computer. It is a very simple explanation. If say you own 1% of the total EOS network tokens on whatever blockchain that is launched with the EOSIO software, you may own as much of it as a Dell computer, for example, right? And then, because the network is growing and more application companies are building on top of the EOS blockchain, eventually the block producers will have more money to invest back into their hardware, and therefore the power of the network grows. So even though you have the same number of tokens, you may have more power that has been allocated to your tokens that has beaten out inflation.
Not to mention voting. I mean,
right.
Which is another awesome side benefit of owning. It gives you and we talked about this earlier with Mahbod, engaged governance. You get to participate in that as well. You get to determine who is on your platform, right? So,
yeah, there are a lot of, and the use cases, we don't even know a lot of them at this point. It's impossible for us to even speculate on how the use cases will turn out, whether it's governance or whether this and that. So, of course, it's going to be very exciting and fun, and it'll be interesting for us to talk about this ongoing as more use cases come out, as more dApps start to develop on EOS, and as we learn about all these. So it's about to get a lot more exciting.
You know, Kevin, you had that quote that they're handing us the keys to a rocket ship, and the more and more I think about it, it is a rocket ship, and it's we need to know how to drive it. They're not going to drive it, right?
Right. Yeah, and they've made that very clear, and it is up to the community. So we will need to be engaged voters and engaged token holders. Anyone who cares about seeing their token value go up should actually keep in touch or keep up with block producers, see that there's no type of corruption going on. If a dapp company looks into EOS and they see that there is corruption and that the block producers are all owned by one wealthy guy, whatever the case is, then they may not develop their dApps on EOS. They may choose a different blockchain platform, and then EOS does not gain the value that we think it will. So it is up to engaged voters. And of course, there are a lot of checks and balances in place. That's what we heard from Thomas about. He is the absolute master at developing that stuff, along with Dan. Like he always says, he likes to talk about Dan, how he goes, I thought I was smart, and then I met Dan, right? So talking to Dan is like talking to Everipedia, all the information of the world. But then also on top of that, you have like a philosopher, and he's also technically adept. I mean, it's just unbelievable talking to him. But let's move forward. Let's do our last news piece here, and then we'll go on to meetups. So we're going to talk about the Wyoming. Wyoming has been very accepting of cryptocurrencies. Wyoming in the United States, it's one of our states. It's one of the smaller states population-wise. It's large geographically, but so they are interested in growing business in the state, and so they're passing a lot of laws to sort of invite, just like Puerto Rico in a way, they're looking to invite innovators and entrepreneurs and tech companies to start their business in Wyoming. And what are your thoughts? I know you've investigated this pretty thoroughly. What do you think of this?
So I've been following it. The title of the article is U.S. State of Wyoming defines cryptocurrency utility tokens as a new asset class. So going back, it is this concept of utility tokens, which definitely separates itself from being a currency only use case. And what is a utility token? Like we said before, it has to have that intrinsic value of a stake in a network, a part of a network from a resource perspective and also a voting perspective. So this is a bill that was passed that in Wyoming there exists a term and a sort of presence of having these utility tokens as a new asset class. It's signed into law. It's a Bill 70, and it's this utility token bill. And I think this is it's amazing, and it's also new to U.S. anyways. The state of Wyoming is the first elected body in the world to define a utility token as a new type of asset class, different from a security or commodity, which is a quote by Caitlin Long. And you can follow her on Twitter, and that's how I've been keeping up with this. So that's Caitlin Long, Caitlin and Long. You can look her up. She's in tune with this, and that's how I've been keeping up on Twitter.
I believe she's an attorney in Wyoming, and she also gave an amazing talk. She went in front of the state legislature and described cryptocurrency in a phenomenal way that was easy to understand. She used the Google Docs reference where people are adding to a Google document and you can see it happening in real time. And she related that to how cryptocurrency is the same way. It's just that Google does not own it. A whole bunch of independent parties own that together. And you actually own it as well by contributing a little bit to it, or you can own it if you follow the rules or if you're putting in the work or if you deserve it, right? Monetary value is just based on what value you are providing to the world or to any situation. That's why Google is so valuable, because we all log into Google every day. We check our email on there and we search the internet, everything. So not sure where I was going with that point exactly, but she goes into great depth about how she gives good examples for folks who are new to cryptocurrency and blockchain to really understand why it makes sense. And I guess I would say that probably made a big difference in getting those bills passed in Wyoming.
That's right. There's also another quote here I wanted to read. This is also by Caitlin Long. It says, quote, "This could be very positive for the cryptocurrency community if Congress can break the tie and clarify everything. It's very exciting that Wyoming is the first state to define what a utility token is, setting an example of how this could become a standard under federal law. I do believe that the Wyoming approach will work under federal securities law, and am optimistic this SEC will agree." So, I mean, some progress here, right, Kevin? I don't know what the end result is, and I leave it up to the lawmakers and obviously the experts. But it's an interesting development.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to say thank you, Caitlin. We just posted her Twitter account link in the chat here. Hopefully, it'll come up soon. And so she is doing a great job in Wyoming, and that state is setting the standard. I mean, who would have known? Anyone who's been to Wyoming just knows about beautiful mountains and wonderful open plains. They would never think cryptocurrency or blockchain, but I mean, kudos to Wyoming for setting the standard there and for leading the charge in this new technological revolution. So let's go to meetups, EOS meetups. We have a couple of them. We actually have a special intro as well from Sheldon, EOS Shenzhen. But first, let's go to Seattle. We have Blockgenic. And actually, we don't have a pre-recorded introduction from them, but in Seattle, they're going to hold an EOS meetup on March 29th, hosted by Blockgenic, and they are a block producer candidate. They have a meetup page now all set up, and so we will put that link up as well. Make sure if you're in Seattle or nearby, you go check that out. Also, we need to mention Hong Kong. We heard EOSphere talk about it earlier. They are going to that meetup in Hong Kong. Yeah. They're flying up there from Australia. That's really neat, and it's going to be a big one, from what I understand. I believe Ian Gregg is going to be there. He is the inventor of the Ricardian contracts that Thomas was talking about earlier today, and that was back in the 90s that he created those. So if you are near Hong Kong, or if you'd like to go to probably one of the biggest EOS meetups in the last couple months, I would say you should definitely go check that out. EOS Atlanta is coming up as well. They have been talking about their date, and I don't know entirely if it's been set yet. Do you have any more info on that, Blue Jays?
I believe it is coming up very soon. I will check again. I also believe it might be in April, so around that time. We will confirm that. And I believe Andrew M. on Telegram would be the best one to ask about that. And we will paste
I just found it. I should say I found the date when you were mentioning that, because I pulled up the meetup, and we are going to post this link too. It's April 5th. Thursday, 5th. April 5th. Yep. And you were right about Andrew M. He is the one hosting it, setting it all up. And guess who's speaking at that meetup? Mr. Thomas Cox will be there. And he, like he said about the New York meetup, which I was at, and it was really fun. So he gives a great talk, and then he also takes a lot of great questions and answers from the community, everyone who shows up. Furthermore, usually there's an after party. You head over to the bar, and you can chit chat with EOS fans and with Thomas directly. He did that in New York, and I would suspect he probably would do it again in Atlanta, assuming that everybody does decide to go out and that everybody's enthusiastic enough about it, which can't imagine why not, right?
Right, not. What is that? You said it's the 5th, right?
Thursday, April 5th.
Thursday, April 5th. Okay, great. It looks like we also have a Swedish meetup coming very soon, and we will get more details about that. It's coming in April. Eric from EOSIO.se is planning that, and we will have more info on that.
Yeah, and I believe that name may actually change. Eric, of course, is running as a block producer as well. EOSIO.se is the current name, and that may change. But he is involved now with the Swedish meetup crew, and they've hinted at it. They don't have exact dates set or actual folks who will be attending. But if you are near Sweden, you should keep your ears open. And of course, we will provide information when we have it. It'll be on our forums in the meetup section. And speaking of those forums, if you have a meetup and you'd like it announced or talked about, or even if you'd like to pre-record a hello and an introduction to your meetup, please let us know on the forums posted on there, or you can email us admin@eosgo.io. That's admin@eosgo.io, or you can always private message us on Telegram. And then the last one, of course, Mr. Sheldon out there in Shenzhen, I believe we have a video.
Yeah, we have a video. Let's kick this one off.
Hi, EOS community from Sheldon. I'm here to introduce the EOS Shenzhen to our community. Shenzhen is a city located in the southern China, just beside Hong Kong. It's known for its innovation, technology, and also entrepreneurship. Our team is located in Shenzhen, has both technology and financial backgrounds. And so far, we have tested our ability to provide a reliable node service in our community testnet. And also, we're planning for the future challenge, including planning to set the primary and secondary and tertiary nodes located in different internet data center. Secondly, we have already planned our meetup section offline in Shenzhen on the 24th of March. You can see on the EOS Go website. And so far, it already have 40 people, more than 40 people signed up for the meetup session. We believe it will be very exciting and very amazing meetup. We believe that we have the competence and we have the determination to provide a high quality service for all the stakeholders in the region of Southern China. Thank you. Thirdly, we are running a public channel called EOS Tech Lover in Chinese, which provides a high quality article translation and also demonstration video making to provide a high quality technology education for the Chinese audience. So together with all the blog producers we are prepared, and also the meetup we are running, also lastly the public channel we are running, we believe that we have the competence and we have the determination to provide a high quality service for all the stakeholders in the region of Southern China. Thank you.
What an excellent meetup announcement.
We have to thank Sheldon, of course, for recording that for us. He is Shenzhen, China, he's telling us, is there a lot of expats there. It's becoming sort of a technological hub, and it's an important city in China for something like blockchain, and they're trying to lead the way. March 24th, as he said, will be the date. If you're near Shenzhen, you should definitely say hello. He's actually asking that we pre-record a hello for him as well to play at the meetup. So we'll have to do that here shortly after the show. Of course, Sheldon, we thank you again for coming on and providing a hello.
Thank you, Sheldon. Kevin, any thoughts of the week here?
Well, so Dan has been very active in Telegram lately. He said a couple of things that were interesting. I know the Bitcoin, you brought it up as well about Bitcoin. He mentioned bringing Bitcoin over to EOS, which I believe is sort of an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration, but basically you're not actually bringing Bitcoin onto it. You can create a Bitcoin-like token that can be transferred back and forth with a two-way peg. Of course, the Bitcoin network has limitations, as Dan was saying, and so therefore it could be very slow to go back and forth, and it could also be expensive depending on how clogged up Bitcoin actually is. It sounds like they are sort of honing in now. You heard Thomas talk about how they are trying to release Dawn 3.0. It should be coming up soon. The Constitution is coming out. Basically, it's crunch time, I think, for them. It sounds like they are not getting much sleep. They're working hard. And we see Dan on Telegram at all hours of the day answering questions. Obviously, we can't thank him enough for coming on and engaging with the community like he does.
Yeah, it does seem with his activity that they probably have he finished a grid module and he finished off a section of code and he's just kind of, okay, guys, hand it over to the testers and let me go on Telegram and answer a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, and I heard someone put it one time. They're like, I think Dan he goes through a really hard, when you're coding, of course, it's very intense and it requires a lot of mental energy. You go on Telegram, you have a bunch of enthusiastic folks who want to talk about EOS. It's kind of fun. It's a good way to let off steam and relax a little bit. So I can just sort of imagine him there holding the dew in his hands, drinking that, and just enjoying talking to the folks about EOS.
Answering a couple of When Moon questions, kick back.
Well, he does, like, if you bring up price with him, he is an admin in the EOS general chat, which has almost 40,000 members now in that chat, and he will say, take the price chat somewhere else, please. This is not the right place for it. He wants to answer technological questions. And also the other day, it was funny. This was in the Telegram summary, but basically he talked about the light clients and inter-blockchain communication.
Yes.
And meanwhile, all the token holders were saying, or all the EOS community folks were saying, thank you, Dan, you're Superman, you're great. And he just kept on talking about light clients and inter-blockchain communication. He's very much about, he loves this technology. He loves working on EOS and explaining it and teaching it. And that's what we learned when we went up there and met him and shot those videos. So if you bring up When Moon with Dan, you may not get an answer from him.
Yeah, he won't answer you. But you do bring up IBC, though, inter-blockchain communication. I did post something on our forums, a little snippet of conversation there. I think it's going to be one of those under the radar. It's just one of those things that could be really big. It could be as big as governance, a type of feature like that. And you alluded to the Bitcoin thing. I think he was trying to basically say, this is a use case. This is what we could do if we wanted to. And IBC, man, let's
Well, he described it, and like you posted rather on the forums, the IBC, inter-blockchain communication, is the answer to infinite scalability. Right? You can get up to tens of thousands with single-threaded. You can get up to possibly hundreds of thousands with multi-threaded. It's going to be inter-blockchain communication where you have multiple EOS blockchains, just like you have multiple cities in the world. And just because you're in one city doesn't mean you cannot communicate or do commerce with another city. It just means that you have to go through some form of communication to make it happen. And that is one way to think about all the different EOS chains and how they'll be connected through EOS.
And you said it rightly so, chains. So you can definitely see what is coming here. They're going to release the software, and who knows out in the wild how many chains are going to be created. And then you're going to have this mechanism to talk to each one of them. So Kevin, I don't know if we should have Kevin chain and Johan chain, but or Blue Jays chain, and then that's something that we might have to think about.
Right. I guess we'll start taking applications for block producers for the Kevin and Blue Jays chains. Just kidding. We're not actually doing that.
Yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah. But it's totally feasible, right? So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Anyone can take that software that they're creating, and you said it earlier. This is a rocket ship, and they're basically handing everyone the keys. It's open source software. They are a software company only. And so if you wanted to take that software and launch the Johan chain, you could even do all 21 block producer slots yourself, or I believe the software is also modifiable to where you can actually just do, 7 block producer? I don't know what the minimum is, but you can choose how many block producer candidates you actually want on your chain.
It's configurable. So it's they started off at having 21 hard coded, and now it's configurable. So that is also another interesting part of the software.
Right. And I'm sure we'll see a lot of private blockchains from companies. Maybe there will be a bank blockchain where they work together just to transfer funds back and forth. This is all speculation. I don't know for sure, but those private chains would also be able to communicate with the public chain, the main EOS chain, and all the other ones that have been developed as well. And of course, we can see the Dan message bot is starting to kick up. He is clearly about to fire up another Q&A, probably because Dan is watching right now. Hello, Dan. Yeah.
Hey, Dan.
Probably not. Yeah, but we always appreciate Dan. And of course, thank you again for having us up there and allowing us to ask you questions and recording those resource allocation video and also the DPOS/BFT Byzantine fault tolerance videos as well. They were very helpful for the community. So thanks again. And what are your thoughts there, Blue Jays? Thoughts of the week?
I saw some interest, those interesting news articles are on my mind, and I think I'm seeing a positive shift and a viewpoint. There was also some general wording in some articles out there about. I will find the source, but what I'm seeing is a general shift in sentiment in a more positive direction. Obviously, given that many of these major issues are taken care of, like we just need to have a lot of transparency and different mechanisms to clear and making sure that a transaction is not basically used for the wrong purposes. And I think that's what the main things are.
Right, and of course we use that term, radical transparency, the one that Dan first coined in his article back, I believe it was December, and basically it refers to blockchain being completely open, how anyone can inspect the transactions that are taking place, they can see what is going on, and that way people are sort of incentivized, or they're most interested in performing the right way, or acting the right way, I should say. So they're easily caught, basically, if they're doing something they should not be doing. Exactly. So we should begin wrapping this up, Blue Jays. It's been a long show, and we appreciate everybody who stuck around. We're going to have Thomas Cox back again next week. Who else is coming up, Blue Jays?
I believe we have EOS New York on the next show. We also have a confirmed guest of Jan Lager, who that's the name he goes by on Telegram, and he will be talking about EOS Index. We also have another guest who may be confirming as well, so we can talk about that as it gets closer. But if you do have any sort of desire to come on the show, feel free. I mean, we are, as you can see, sort of laid back in our style here, and we'll definitely talk EOS with you. And it's good to also put your project out there, because I think that's going to do well for you to publicize it.
Yeah, and we're here to just, obviously our goal is EOS Go. We are not running for Block Producer. We get that question sometimes, that we are just an independent, neutral source for helping EOS get strong, empower EOS, basically become stronger. A blockchain is only as strong as its community, and that is our primary goal, is to help grow that community, to educate and inform, and also perform outreach, and also to help DApp companies grow their communities as well. We're starting to work on a program to help DApp companies who are building on EOS with their communities. So we're trying to sort of figure out the best way for us to move forward so that we can help EOS as much as possible. That is our primary goal. The Block Producer report is coming out again Wednesday. We always will help report on Block Producers so the community can stay up to date as to what's going on there. I should also say that EOS Go, the website, is coming up. We have forums. We've had those for a while. EOS Go website will be a place where anyone can go and learn about EOS, I should say. They can connect with others on the community forums. They can also educate. They can start someone off with the EOS Go website. If they're looking to help someone else understand what EOS is and why it is important and what it will do for the world, the EOS Go website will be the place to go. It will be eosgo.io, eosgo.io. Right now, that address forwards you over to our forums, which have been up for 3 or 4 months. But That website will go live later this week. We will talk about that. We will send out the message when it is up, and you can check it out. And we are always open to feedback. We'd like to know what you want to see, what could be better, and what you think. And that same goes for this show. If it's good, constructive feedback, we would love to hear it. And of course, we are always looking to get better. So let us know.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And hit subscribe on this YouTube channel. Join the Community Updates Telegram channel. And there are also, we have a Facebook and Twitter as well. So thank you for tuning in today. Kevin, anything else before we say goodbye and turn off?
I had the same message. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. We will see you next week for episode 5, and go EOS.
Go EOS.